Call the Committee of Commerce and Labor to order. Clerk, take the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Steve, you changed. It's cold. It's no warmer up here, I can assure you, Senator Sproul. All right, we were going to first take up the subcommittee report that was held this morning. Unfortunately, the subcommittee chairman, Senator Norman, could not be with us, so I'll do the best I can to fill in the bill. First, I'd like to, with a recommendation that they be stricken, there's Senator Saslaw's 284 and 285. Senator Saslaw concurs. The gist of what he had in those two bills has been incorporated into the master bill. So with that, I accept a motion to strike those two bills. Been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 284 and 285 be stricken. Clerk, open the rolls.
Ten ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, those two bills are stricken. The next bill is Senate Bill 662, my bill, and at the request of myself, I'm going to ask that bill be carried over to the next session. It was a unanimous vote of the subcommittee that bill be carried over, and I would so move. Is there a second? Okay, clerk, open the rolls, please. Okay. The next bill on the list is Senate Bill 922, Senator Chafin's bill, and what that does is direct the State Corporation Commission to use the unconsolidated capital structure and cost of capital of an investor-owned electric utility when regulating the rates, terms, and conditions. Currently, there is no requirement the capital structure and cost of capital be unconsolidated. This is at a request of APCO and Senator Chafin. It deals with making sure that only Virginia securities and bonds are included, not anything in West Virginia. Senator Chafin, did I sum that up pretty good for you? Okay. All right. By a vote of 6 to no. Oh, there were amendments on that bill. Clerk, if you could report the amendments.
Mr. Chairman, there were 4 amendments. The first amendment's on line 158 after subdivision insert. That does not result in an overall rate change. The second amendment is on the following line 159. After the word that, strike the remainder of line 159 and all of line 160 and insert are revenue neutral to the utility. The third amendment is on line 575. After period, strike unconsolidated. And the last amendment is on line 576. After utility, comma, insert excluding any debt associated with securitized bonds that are the obligation of non-Virginia jurisdictional customers, comma.
Okay, I understand those are technical amendments. Senator Chafin? Okay. It's been moved and seconded that the amendments be adopted. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, those amendments before this. Is there a motion on the bill as amended? Been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 922 as amended be reported. Clerk, open the rolls.
Twelve ayes, 0 nays.
12 ayes, 0 nays. That bill is reported. The next bill on the list is Senator Newman's 965, the intent of which has been incorporated into the Senate Bill 96667. Senator Newman, do you have any comments?
I like mine better, but I understand that the subcommittee made a motion to roll it into yours, sir.
There's been a unanimous vote to roll it in despite Senator Newman's liking his own bill better. That's the first time I've heard in 27 years that somebody actually liked their own bill better than what was actually reported, Senator Newman. But is there a motion on that? We made a recommendation of 6-0 that it be rolled in.
Do we, Mr. Chairman, just as courtesy of the patron, if he doesn't want it rolled in, do we do that?
Well, we have three choices as I see it. You can carry the bill over, you can roll it in, or you can kill it. The patrons
could pass it.
Could pass it. That option would cause great conflict with the other bill that's coming in. So the chairman really thinks there's only three options right now, but I guess there's always that fourth option. So is there a motion on the bill? It was 6-0 that we incorporated.
I'm not going to make a motion. I really like my bill, Mr. Chairman, but I'm sure someone else will make the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we roll a bill in.
And Mr. Chairman, I know this is a procedural motion, but I just would urge that we not, just because out of courtesy to the patron, and what, you may be entirely right about what's going to happen to it, but because the patron does not want his bill rolled in, I would oppose it.
I just don't want to be a cheap patron. I don't want to be a cheap patron.
Oh, you're not going to be chief patron.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I was trying to help out a good Republican. Am I gonna be in trouble by getting between y'all
I
fight?
always like you, sir. It's all good.
I'm just trying to help out now.
You're a good boy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Not a good, you're a good friend.
Be careful, Senator Newman will bite the other finger. I'm seeing that, something on that finger there. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that those two, the gist of
Mine be
Senator
rolled
Newman's
in.
been rolled in. Clerk, open the rolls.
Six ayes, 6 nays.
We can vote on mine a little later on.
All right, well, we'll hold that bill since it's still in the bosom of the committee, and we'll move on
Probably kill it. I
to
just-
Senate Bill 966. I believe there's an amendment in nature substitute. Okay. I don't see Senator Saslaw here, so I'm going to entertain a motion to adopt the substitute, and we're going to defer this until Senator Saslaw was a chief co-patron on this bill, and I want to defer. I'm sure he's going to want to make some comments, but it'll give everybody time to digest the amendment in nature substitute. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the substitute, and then been moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us. I'm going to move to the calendar and start taking non-committee members on the list. And where's the list? Okay. Senator Peterson, you are first on the list.
Mr. Chair, yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 955, which should look very familiar. It's got a couple extra bells and whistles on the end in regard to how it should be implemented, basically taking into account some of the feedback I'd gotten from my earlier bill, but it was the earlier Senate Bill 9, which repealed the rate freeze and went back to the system that we had prior to 2015. It's not a system I'm fond of, but it is the system that we had prior to 2015. So essentially, this is the repeal without the input of Dominion to put, oh, do you have a substitute? Then please distribute the substitute.
Is there a motion on substitute? Been moved and seconded to substitute to Senate Bill 955 be adopted. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us. Senator Peterson.
So again, the substance of it is that we would go back to, it would repeal what we passed in 2015. It would not include any other bells and whistles in terms of grid transformation projects, renewables, anything else. It is just a straight up repeal, a clean repeal, if you will. And then it has some enactment clauses at the end that would basically enable the credits to be given forward of what would be the refunds. And it would go back and capture the refunds for the years 2015, 2016, 2017 that right now have not been collected. So that's the sum and substance of the bill, Mr. Chair.
Okay, this is the son of the one we've already
It is
passed
the
by,
son.
definitely. Okay.
Yes,
the
sir.
son,
Y'all killed
now,
that bill while I still had
believe
time
it's,
to refile.
in direct conflict with Senate Bill 966. Senator Newman?
Mr. Chairman, I guess Senator Peterson and I have questions. One, does it require and I haven't gotten through it, the substitute yet, does it require a repayment of everything that would be quote, overcharge from before?
It would require the SEC to go back and basically evaluate. Now, remember, of the over earnings, only 70% goes back.
Right.
So it would basically go back to the system we had previous.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peterson, you know, I like my bill, but I do think the problem with this bill is that a lot of that over earnings has ended up going into the grid, or it's gone back to investors, or it's not there.
It's been paid back as dividends?
Well, it's not there anymore, and so it's not available. That's the reason why I think that when you're looking backwards, something closer to the $325 million from Dominion and $60 million from American Electric Power makes sense. The part that I, like about the other bills is that my bill, that is it doesn't force consumers to have to pay for 5,000 kilowatts of renewables, and it doesn't have the undergrounding, that type thing, nor does yours. But the look back on this might not be quite possible. I'm more concerned about the Encores, National Grids, Iberdrolas, and others, SCANAs, who've actually, not made it, and things like this could make that very difficult.
Well, I would like to think that the credit rating of our utility is a little bit stronger than SCANA, at least from what I read in the Wall Street Journal. It is what it is. And again, it is a clean repeal. I tried to make it that way. I didn't put 50 pages of jargon into it. I actually like your bill, Senator Newman, also. That would be my plan B. But like I said, it is what it is. I'm not trying to dress it up.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
It's one of the things, particularly for my neck of the woods, the people I represent, that's really been important is undergrounding. And we've had some real challenges with that going forward in the way under the old scheme, the Corporation Commission looks at that. So I do think a different direction to make sure that those constituents can be protected, because candidly, I remember weeks when we didn't have power in my neck of the woods because lines that should have been undergrounded were not. We've also had some other very serious challenges with trying to get undergrounding going forward. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'm going to gently move to PBI the bill.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We gently PBI the bill. Is there any more discussion? Clerk, open the rolls.
Eight ayes, 5 nays.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
All right, Senator Sasslaw has joined us, so we're going to take up Senate Bill 966 and 967. In the end, I'll entertain a motion to roll 967 and 966 and make both Senator Sasslaw and I chief co-patrons. But let me briefly go over what the bill entails, so that the committee is fully aware of this. Let me first say that this is extensive negotiations between many concerned parties on this. Is every party happy? No, they're not. But by a vote of 6-0, the subcommittee did vote to report the bill. Let me briefly go down through what it includes. It ends the rate freeze, as we know. It also includes a look back, take into account starting at 1 January last year in terms of a rate review for what's going on. Calls then for a triennial review, one review every 3 years. Following that, it provides immediate credits from Dominion and to the tune of about $133 million, and from APCO $10 million in fuel recovery costs.
At 67 million.
Okay, and added additional 67 from Dominion in 2019, bringing the total to $200 million, which will be reduced earnings as part of the first review. Immediate rate reduction is equal to about $125 million annual from Dominion, an immediate rate reduction from APCO of $50 million. That's immediate in anticipation of what the tax cuts were that were passed recently by Congress. It'll be trued up in April of 2019 by the SEC once we know the full impact of those tax cuts on the overall rates. But there's no question that the tax cuts will be reflected as a rate reduction for every consumer of electricity in Virginia. For the first time, we're introducing the concept of electric grid transformation projects at the distribution level being everything but the high voltage levels. What it'll allow is, if you will, building a much smarter grid than we have right now with distributed generation, two-way communication, an increase in cyber and physical security. By cyber, I think we're all familiar with the cyber attacks. By physical security, we mean hardening the grid for weather events and those types of things. It requires automated meters, more smart meters, and also includes some LED street lights and a number of ways to use to conserve energy. It provides for some specific issues. You'll find many of these in the reenactment clauses of 5,000 megawatts in the public interest, 5,000 megawatts of solar and wind, including in that 5,000 will be 50 megawatts of rooftop. And also in the public interest, at least a demonstration project on offshore wind resources. It ends the reliance on the four-part RIM test for energy efficiency mandates, and now includes a 3 out of 4. And so in other words, for a project to be positively acted on by the State Corporation Commission, 3 out of the 4 requirements. It does set that path forward for offshore wind. It extends the commitment from for energy share and weatherization for low-income folks to $13 million from Dominion, and APCO $13 million a year over 10 years, which is a $130 million commitment from Dominion. And APCO maintains its current rates of production. It's important to know that this commitment comes not out of any of the rates or ratepayers, but this commitment comes from the stockholders of the both of those investment-owned utilities. There's a 10-year commitment for energy efficiency with a total of $870 million in energy efficiency projects applied during that time frame. The stakeholder group will be created to develop the prioritization for these programs. It'll also include energy efficiency goals to be established when it's submission to the IRP. Also includes other things. It already previously mentioned the transmission, for the first time looking at underground transmission lines as opposed to just the undergrounding of distribution lines, which is going on right now. It includes a pilot program for battery storage in the Dominion service territory, 30 megawatts of battery storage, 10 megawatts in the APCO. This is important if we're going to actually integrate the types of renewables we're bringing online so that renewables then become a 24/7 source of power as opposed to the intermittent source of power that renewables represent right now. Also includes investigation into broadband. Can the utilities and their existing right-of-ways be used to extend broadband to more areas of the state currently not supervised? It'll include an investigation into that. And a report on the utility economic development activities. This report looks forward. We've lost several major economic development projects because we did not have sites ready to go in Virginia. This will direct our utilities to start to investigate and report back to us what changes we need to make to look at prospective operations and that allow us to really set up sites ready to go so that we don't lose those next opportunities. Senator Sasslaw, you want to add?
Well, you pretty much, Mr. Chairman, you pretty much covered it on that. As you mentioned, the $125 million tax cut. Dominion gets, there's $125 million as a result of the corporate tax cut that occurred in Congress. And let me turn my mic on, I'm sorry. The $125 million a year, which is a result of the corporate tax cut in Congress, that will go directly back to the ratepayers, I believe, as a credit. And that'll continue forever, and or as long as that tax cut stays around. As you mentioned, instead of just having the RIM test, which showed that it had to, whatever they invested had to benefit everybody, including the people it was, not just the people it was intended for, the whole network. Which is, the example I was given would be the same as saying, if you start a Head Start program in Richmond, it would have to benefit the people who aren't in it in Northern Virginia. I mean, it kind of didn't make any sense. So there's 4 tests, and it has to pass 3 of the 4. to be approved. In any year that the overage does not match, the investment in the renewables, then that money, that overage, will go back to the ratepayers. So, I mean, there's an incentive, to for APCO and for Dominion to make sure that that money is invested, because they can't keep it, regardless. So, you got that. I said that. Okay, the triennial reviews, instead of being reviewed every 2 years, APCO and Dominion will be reviewed every 3 years. And if they've over-earned or under-earned, the adjustments are made. And, by the way, over-earnings and perhaps even under-earnings are not because your sales all of a sudden shot up. I mean, it may bump a little in extra cold weather, but it's generally a result of an accounting function more than anything else. As an example, if you wrote off a $400 million investment in 1 year, you can bet it would show under earnings. You stretch it out over 10 years or 15 years, it's going to show over earnings. So it's you got bookkeeping accounting and you got regulatory accounting, and it depends on which one you're using. That's what determines whether or not you've over-earned or you've under-earned. And the review, which I said is triennial. However, the first review will include 2017. Look at the books for 2017. So in 2021, the SCC will look at 2017, 18, 19, and 20. Then the following year, I guess APCO gets reviewed. Then for 21, 22, and 23, the next up would be, batter up would be Dominion. They get reviewed in 24, APCO the following year. So, I mean, it's not like they get to keep anything extra, or if they've under-earned, can't come in for rate. It all comes out in the wash, regardless. It's just one extra year, and it gives quite frankly, it gives the SEC a 1-year hiatus in having to prepare for this, as well as the utility companies and the Attorney General's office, as far as I can see. So that basically is what we're doing. He mentioned 5,000 megawatts of solar and onshore and offshore wind. And let me tell you this, that's 1,250,000 homes. 1 million. If we go back, as you just heard from Senator Peterson, if we go back to what they had before, forget the 5,000. The 5,000 that's in this bill drops to 500. Let me repeat that. If we went back to what Senator Peterson advocated, the 5,000 drops to 500. Okay? So pretty much you can forget renewables. That this puts the onus on the utilities by 2028. And by the way, 1,250,000 homes. I think Dominion, their residential is 2.7 million. So it's almost half their homes. So, and quite frankly, I'd be shocked if they didn't beat the 2028, because in the 500 megawatts that we put in the rate freeze bill 3 sessions ago, they had till 2020. They went past that last summer. So I think there's a lot of good things in this bill. Overall, the utilities have coughed up more than $1 billion and of givebacks and dues with respect to energy grid transformation and renewables. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and let me just kind of go up to 80,000 feet, because there's a lot of numbers. We talked about a lot of numbers. What does that mean to the average homeowner? The average homeowner is going to see their rates reduced back to what they paid in 2009. I want you to think about that. Back to 2009, the average homeowner will see a 1,000 kilowatt hour average homeowner will get a $5 reduction. I want you to ask yourself, name me one thing where you can actually see a reduction in the rates that you paid? Gasoline, okay, that's one thing, okay.
Name
What did you
two.
pay in 2008 for gas?
Tell them name two.
Yeah, anyway, and as you watch gasoline creep back up, this pretty much locks in these base rates for a long period of time. I want to say one more thing. There's been a lot of talk, and I notice a little bit, of some of my colleagues on my side of the aisle about solar power. I'm going to explain a little bit about solar power. The cost of installation of solar power installed has come down dramatically. It's now in the $1.20 to $1.50 per watt installed. $1.50 per watt. When you start ramping that up to 1,000 megawatts, what you're talking about is $1 billion investment.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question?
Let me just finish this, Mark, and I'll be right with you. $1.2 billion. That gives you about the same power output as a new combined cycle plant. Okay, the delta is that the solar is intermittent. It doesn't always produce electricity. The combined cycle plant will produce electricity round the clock. The flip side of that is the solar panels require no fuel. The combined cycle plant requires natural gas to continue to operate. So I think you can see why something that perhaps many folks that are cost conscious like myself have typically resisted over the last years. The cost has come down where it's very competitive vis-a-vis conventional ways of generating electricity. And as we start to delve into the coal ash issues, we're going to find out that in this way, not only does it make environmental sense, but it probably makes fiscal sense. Senator Obenshain.
Yeah, my question, Mr. Chairman, and this is a big bill. There's a lot to digest real quickly, and my question is, if the solar is so economical, why are we forcing 5,000 kilowatts down their throat? I mean, if it's economical, aren't they going to make an economic decision to do it? And I'm concerned if it's not economical, we are taking away with one hand what we're giving with the other. It's going to be the ratepayers who are going to pay the price for that uneconomical decision. I mean, I hope it is. I mean, I certainly think it's a great thing. We're talking about 50 square miles of solar panels here, and that's a whole lot of solar panels to mandate the installation of. If it makes economic sense, I'm all for it.
Well, Senator Obenshain, let me just say this, and I helped you do those calculations on 50 square miles. When we determined it was, for those that not in the knowledge, it's 8 acres a megawatt for solar power. So if you do the math, it's going to be 50 square miles. That's, think of driving along an interstate for 10 miles and running inland on that 5 miles. It's not really, in the great scheme of things, a tremendous amount of land. It'll typically be located in areas that are rural right now. But let me add this to it. I think the economic case can be made. I think it's these things, and believe me, the statement here is it's in the public interest of 5,000 megawatts. The utilities still have to go in front of the State Corporation Commission with these projects. They still have to get approval. And let me tell you, that's not just the end of it. PJM's got to sign off on it. A whole lot of people got to sign off on this.
Mr. Chairman, I might say to Senator Obenshain, probably the cheapest and easiest thing they could do is just keep building coal plants. The problem is there's a price to be paid for that. And these things, nothing's free in life. And long term, the solar and wind are a lot cheaper than building fossil plants.
And Mr. Chairman, what I would say is if we're making a social judgment, let's say that, and not dress it up as an economic judgment.
Well, it's both.
I think that's okay.
I'd say, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Sassler.
it's quite frankly, it's both, because long term, renewables are going to be a lot cheaper than digging that stuff out of the ground.
Okay. Roving debate. Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, first, I had the opportunity to sit through the meeting this morning, and I know that you and Senator Saslaw have worked very hard on this. And as a matter of fact, I think what you've got here is a vastly improved bill over the bill that we had just last week. Last week, we had much fewer dollars when it came to taxes. We had much fewer dollars when it came to the refunds and both for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Mr. Chairman, where I just feel like, I'm almost persuaded, but is that as I've said before this committee scores of times, the consumers that I have in the American Electric Power area have, because they have retired the coal, and I'm pleased that they found a way to do what they can on that. The increases in there, and AEP's been very efficient, but it has been dramatic. The impact on our guys is dramatic. So from a consumer perspective, the changes you made to your bill this morning were so much appreciated, and I'm very grateful. Then the last sections that came in were very concerning to me, and that is that there is just a tremendous amount, and you were kind enough to list out those items, which are new additions. And Senator Openchange mentioned one. And last time, part of the reason why I voted against the bill, one of only 4 people that voted against the bill on the floor, was because in the last minute everything stopped, and we've added 500 new kilowatts, right? Megawatts of solar power. And I knew that was going to hit the consumers. And then this time, we don't get 500 megawatts, we get 5,000 megawatts. And then the deep concern I have about that is they're deemed to be in the public interest. We are not going to look to some of our consumer protection groups, the State Corporation Commission and others, on those items. Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I know that my bill's not up, but I just do believe that if we were to keep your desire, which is let's make sure that we do the repeal, let's go back to having State Corporation Commission overview. I appreciate and applaud you and have told you that I'm grateful for those moves, but do it without the basically straight to consumers, what is going to be tens and maybe in some cases, well, it will be hundreds of millions of dollars of directions to the State Corporation Commission is for me what makes me almost persuaded but not there. And that's the reason why I would hope that we would have had a much skinnier bill, but I'm grateful that you and Senator Saslaw are kind of moving back, and now that the threat from the carbon policy from the White House is no longer there. But I just think that the other giveaways are just too high and the impact on consumers too great.
Okay, any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sproul was next, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment, and then I have some questions for you, either Senator Saslaw.
Sure.
First, let me start off my comments. My neighbor across the street, they in the late 80s, and she was said that her electric bill was $495 this month versus $2-something. And I'm looking at the bill and knowing that Dominion is an investment company for the stockholders. And I'm trying to understand when you, Senator Saslaw, said about reduction in rate, and you know, and I know, any utility company, including the one that I used to work for, is that when you do a reduction in rates, is that the number one, I want to know exactly how long will this reduction be? Then will you get the money back? I don't ever believe that Dominion or Verizon that I used to work for, when they do a reduction in rate for anything, for give me a reduction in rate, when they're going to get it back. Number two, Mr. Chairman, I heard Senator Saslaw say something about credit forever. Unless I'm mistaken, I'm trying to find it in the bill, credit forever. You ain't never gonna find no utility company to give you credit forever.
As long as that tax increase, as long as that corporate tax cut stays in existence, that goes back to the ratepayer.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the next one, he said something about broadband broadband investigation. Can you tell me, what do you mean by that? Broadband investigation. Mr. Chairman, are you the next staff? What you mean by broadband investigation?
Let me just say this, that there's been a lot of talk about whether those people involved in plumbing broadband to your house, if you will, bringing you the fiber to the house, whether, I'm trying to answer Senator's, okay, all right. Whether there can be a degree where the Sprints of the world work with the utilities to bring broadband into areas that's not currently been served. It won't be an initiative of the utilities, but it's an issue of whether or not the utilities can work in conjunction with that to allow them to bring broadband to places that are currently underserved. So it's no definitive action, it's merely a direction to our investor-owned utilities to look at that. Quite frankly, I wish we'd extended that to the co-ops also, because they tend to have a lot more underserved areas than the investor-owned utilities do, but that's not the subject of what this bill is about.
So, Mr. Chairman, when you say broadband investigation with Sprint, you're also talking about Verizon too, is that right?
I'm talking about everyone who might be interested in running that. There's also several small businesses out there that are running fiber and setting up their own little networks that I'm aware of, one in Giles County and places like that. So it would be anyone that's interested in setting up an operation to bring broadband to areas that are currently underserved, and whether or not, based on where these utility lines are running, whether or not they can use that as an avenue to bring broadband to areas that are underserved.
Yes, sir.
So it's not limited to anyone, and it's really incumbent upon the utilities to look at it and give us a report back.
And then also, Mr. Chairman, you or the Senate staff said something about this would be a great investment for the stockholder. So I'm trying to find out that what you're doing is nice as far as updating your system. I checked, I asked someone from Dominion earlier that how come other states, I used Maryland for an example, and others who have did upgrade in their services. What I mean by upgrade, for an example, when someone's lights go out right now in Virginia, unless you call in the neighborhood, say my lights is out, it won't get fixed. But so other states have done an upgrade, so if your lights go out in your house, our whole community, they would know, and I can understand that. So I said to them, how much are they charging as far as passing on to the customer? So I said, you could give me a reduced rate, and I'm saying, well, how come they were able to do an upgrade on their grid and make it convenient for their customers as far as in the future, something that should have been done a long time anyway. So you're going to do an upgrade, you're going to pass it on to the customer in the long run.
Senator Sasswell.
Yes, sir.
I think I can answer your question. First off, the Washington Post has done numerous stories on the fact that it's taken Potomac Electric Power longer in Maryland to restore electricity than Virginia, than Dominion Virginia Energy in our area. Let me repeat that. The Post has done, when we've had these storms, they've commented on the fact that it took a lot more time for Maryland to turn on their customers than the energy companies here in Virginia. In addition to that, the Dominion's, for instance, their residential rate is 2 cents a kilowatt hour, I believe, less than Maryland's is. So I don't know where you got your information from, but it's Lionel, Senator Spruill, that's not the way it is.
All right. Last question, Mr. Chairman, last question that you and since you said about the investments. So I'm saying now I know the stockholder got to make money. So in the long run, when all this is done, is this all about making investments for the stockholder? That was the last thing since that you said, the investment. I'm saying, I understand that if they're going to use it in the long run, you said 130 million, that ain't helping the people's light bills. 5 million what? Customers. But I'm saying people who live in, I'm never going to run for governor, so first of all. So I'm talking about Norfolk and Chesapeake. So when you say 5 million customers, I don't worry about that. I'm concerned about the people who cannot afford to pay the bill now, so they don't understand that. So then the last thing you said, the trick of me said, hey, you said something about investment for stockholders. Why would I care about the stockholders of a power company? I don't care about the stockholders. So I'm saying if you are doing this to fatten the stockholders' pocket, I got to vote against it. Now, you weren't doing it because it's a thing to do, it's to modernize the system, and we got to pay for it, fine. But the last thing someone said was do an investment for stockholders. I have heartburn. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. There are other comments. Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, and I too want to echo the sentiments and comments of the senator from Bedford. when it comes to the hard work that you're doing on this. I think, we all went into this piece of legislation when it first came about during the time thinking that the Clean Power Plan and those other things that were coming down from the federal government were going to significantly increase the power bills of our consumers, our customers, our clients, our constituents. And what we now have seen is that those things have not occurred, and that's why we're kind of hitting the reset button on this. And granted, I'm not the best expert when it comes to utilities and electric transmission, and I've done one case before the SEC a long time ago about a road called the Greenway, not about anything such as this. But in looking through this, Mr. Chairman, certainly I think we all would want to make sure that we're maximizing the amount of money that's returned back to the consumer, who would otherwise might have benefited from that had we not put this piece of legislation in place. The second thing I look at when I look at this bill is, and that concerns me, is that it appears, Mr. Chairman, and maybe you can correct me, I'm wrong, but that any cost that you have with these new generation facilities for solar, the ones utilizing energy for solar or wind, or even that you might get on the electric distribution grid transformation projects, that would then be a subject of a customer credit reinvestment offset pursuant to this thing here, could still be charged back a second time and recovered as cost investment over the facility's service life, or included in part of the cost, revenues, and investments in the triennial review proceeding, or even be found of a rate in a rate adjustment clause petition that might be filed in the future. So what concerns me is that maybe I'm reading this wrong, that there are opportunities here that even under the guise of new facilities, new power facilities utilizing wind and solar, is that there will be an ability here to double charge for those projects. And that to me is a concern. And so perhaps, Mr. Chairman, you could address that respectfully and
let me state that, and no, there is not an avenue for double charging.
We specifically took care of that.
There's specific language in there, and we might ask Mr. Russ to come up just to clarify it here in just a second. But let me just say this, for these grid investments that we're talking about, to the maximum extent possible, if there were over earnings in the base rates, now hear me out. If you ask a question, hear me out, okay? If there were over earnings that would normally be accomplished in the base rates, rather than refund the over earnings, that money will be put into grid investment. If there is additional money required for grid investment, then the utility would then apply for the rate adjustment clause to cover the difference between what might be in the base rate over earnings, you can call it over earnings, or whatever. So there's not an attempt to double charge. It would be come back on a rate adjustment clause for the balance of between what was in the base rates to accomplish this grid modernization and the excess costs that would have to then go in front of the State Corporation Commission to cover. The intent of that language and the goal of that language is to recognize that this grid modernization that we're going to do needs to be done in the most efficient manner that we possibly can do that. If we're going to do it in an efficient manner and set up contracts the way they should, and being a contractor for my entire life, I can tell you a start and stop is no way to do business. To mobilize, to unmobilize, to not know what you're going to do, as opposed to efficiently laying out a logical program. And we know, and the utilities know, where the problems lie in the grid. They know the best pattern to go after those areas that continuously find faults, so that they can work those areas first and then update the entire grid. This is a 10-year commitment. It's in the neighborhood of about $200 million per year over a 10-year period to modernize that grid, to do some of the things that Delegate Sproul was just talking about, to know where, Senator Sproul, excuse me, just 2 seconds, let me finish what I'm saying here. To be able to identify a problem, where that problem is, so they can deploy the proper crew to go out and fix it, to sometimes identify problems before they actually fault and do that. They can sense overloads, they can sense those things and react to that. If there is a problem, rerouting that problem so that the minimum number of people have any disruption at all to their electrical service. Those are the kind of things that a smart grid will apply to you. And I will note that we are not Puerto Rico in Virginia, nor are we Florida. If you notice what happened in Florida, the entire state, from the Key West right on up to Tallahassee and beyond, was literally devastated by a hurricane, yet they came online within a week. Think about that. They were able to bring that grid back up in a week. If that had happened here in Virginia, what we already know, down in my neck of the woods, it was 2 to 3 weeks sometimes before anybody got power after a hurricane. I want to be more like Florida in their ability to bring that grid up, because the entire economy, not to mention the public safety factor of not having electricity, not to mention the major inconvenience to the folks that don't have power, that does that. And so that's the goal of that.
Mr. Chairman,
Jack, would you like to chime in? We're trying to answer Senator Stanley's
I
question
want
for
you
him
to
right now.
explain.
Yeah, Senator Sproul.
Would you mind explaining one more time about question I asked about investment? You said something about the investment going to the grid. You mind explaining that part again?
Okay.
Investment part of it.
The investment in the grid can be any number of things. They can be voltage regulators. They can be smart meters. They can be sensors that allow the grid to talk back and forth. They can be a number of, it could be hardening, even things like concrete poles, even burying power lines where they know that in the last 10 years, 9 times they've lost power. It makes sense to bury power lines here. That's the kind of investment in the grid we're talking about. That when you talk about that, Senator Sproul, it's no different than saying, okay, we're going to invest in a brand new combined cycle plant for $1.4 billion. Yes, the stockholders do that. Yes, the shareholders will pay for it, but it's a critical part of meeting the electric load here in Virginia. This committee several years ago made the commitment that we don't feel like we want to have that much power that we were. We were the number 2 importer of electricity next to California. If we're going to be able to control our rates, we have to be able to have that generation within inside the ability of our investor-owned utilities. Jack, you want to fill in Senator Stanley a little better about his concerns about, if you will, double dipping?
Yeah. I'm John Rust. I'm here on behalf of Dominion. One of the things that this bill does, this bill is a transformative bill in a lot of ways. It transforms the electric grid from the 1950s technology to bring us up to modern technology where we have the capacity to find out what the loads are on various parts of the grid, where we've got two-way communication so we can deal with all the distributed resources that are coming in. When you've got a solar plant that's feeding into a circuit and you don't know whether it's cloudy or bright, you don't know what the load is going to be, you have a heck of a time trying to balance what's going on in the grid. So these are improvements that everybody agrees are absolutely essential if we're going to use renewables and going to have an opportunity to make them work. This also transforms renewables. There's no question that there is a significant number of renewables that is found in the public interest in this. Unlike other states, it's not a mandate. We still have to look at it. It still has to be a reasonable cost. There has been a resistance in the commission to approving these projects in the past. The public interest says these are projects we want to look at. Frankly, the solar projects are in the dollar range that they need to be successful, and Dominion has been looking very seriously at those to go forward. And that's something that this bill will do, is give us an opportunity to transform our energy. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Senator
ask Jack a
Overton.
question? I mean, isn't it the job of the State Corporation Commission to judge that representation about what's in the, what's
sir.
economical and in the interest? And aren't you asking us on kind of on the fly to make that determination in place of the State Corporation Commission?
This is not in place of the State Corporation Commission. The State Corporation Commission has not hesitated in the past to turn down things that had previously been found in the public interest.
But you're asking us to determine it is in the public interest.
Yes, sir, because it is something that I think that the state has to encourage going forward. It's something that we are going to do in terms of trying to meet these kinds of needs going forward with renewable energy.
But, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Overton.
so State Corporation Commission does it on the basis of detailed submissions that are
Yes, sir.
made by the parties, supporters, and opponents, and we're being asked to do it like right now on the basis of this.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We are asking that you do that because it's something that has been worked through. This is one of the Rubin Group recommendations. This is something that the renewable community has been looking at for some time.
Mr. Chairman, who's the
Senator
working
Overton.
group?
Excuse me,
You just said the working group?
the Rubin Group.
The Rubin Group.
It's a group that's been looking at solar power, been looking at energy issues for 2 or 3 years now at this point. And there were a series of recommendations that they've come down with. This is one of the recommendations that they made.
Is that Mark Rubin?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If I could interject, that group was basically established at the behest of the Commerce and Labor Committee, Senator Obenshain, 3 years ago, to look at, to bring the stakeholders, the solar groups, or we want solar, we want it everywhere, and we want it now. The utilities are like, no, you can't do that here, there, and everywhere. So rather than hash it out, like you're saying, on the fly in front of the committee, we established a group that brought, and there's, I understand 20, 25 members, and they meet frequently. It's not one of these that meets once every other, it's usually once a month, to work on different programs. I think there are 3 or 4 pieces of legislation, Senator Obenshain, we passed last year that were as a result of the Rubin Group, because of the nature of the need to have to come in and go back into, do away with the rate freeze and go back to a regulated environment by the SCC. The Rubin Group had been preparing and weighed in with this legislation. Anyway, go on, Jack.
Just in answer to Senator Spruill's question, with regard to the rate reductions that are coming from tax reform, they will be permanent unless the federal government changes the tax code again. In other words, this would be a tax burden that is no longer on the utilities. It would not be something that we would be able to recover when we're not paying the tax. And so that's what that reduction is, and that is a permanent reduction that goes forward. That certainly could be changed by the federal government, but at this point, it's a permanent reduction.
Mr. Chairman.
Hang on. Senator Dance is next. Unless you have do you have a
No,
question? for
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
I do.
Do you have a question for?
No, I want my question answered.
Okay.
My question answered, and Mr. Russ, maybe you can do it. Any costs that you have that are associated with those new facilities, utilizing wind or solar?
Yes, sir.
Or the grid transformation projects?
Yes, sir.
That are then under this bill the subject of the customer credit reinvestment offset?
Only if the commission has approved it, but yes, sir.
Okay. Are they also eligible for recovery through your cost, revenues, investments, and future triennial review proceedings?
The cost of the investments, the amount that's invested, would be placed into the rate base. That would be part of what happens with that. But that placement in the rate base cannot cause an increase in rates. Then that's expressed in the bill. And it would give us an opportunity to make a very substantial set of investments without raising the rates, which is part of the process we're trying to go through.
And Mr. Chairman?
Senator Stanley.
So then after you get the offset, would they also be able to be recovered again through the rates for generation and distribution services over the service life of the facility?
They would go into the rate base, and when they're in the rate base, those things are depreciated out over their service life. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
And then based on these customer credit reinvestment offsets for these costs for wind and solar, would they then be able to be included as the subject matter of a rate adjustment clause petition as well?
No, sir, that's expressly forbidden. If it's
So
used-
in 2 of those instances, they would be able to be recaptured again?
If in fact we make the investment that is sufficient to offset the amount of over earnings, that investment would be treated as a part of the rate base.
And,
Yes,
and Mr. Chairman, one final question.
Senator Stanley.
So that it would be, in effect, a double charge,
I don't agree with that. sir.
double dipping.
No, I don't think it's a double dip. It is.
You may have another word for it, but you're getting paid twice for one investment.
No, sir, we're making an investment in this just as the consumer is. We're giving up our share of the refund that would be coming back. What we're talking about is deferring a refund so that we have an opportunity to do a program that doesn't require us to raise the rates. If we go through this on a rate adjustment clause basis, we're going to be raising the rates for everybody with those rate adjustment clauses as they go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I
Wait,
make a
Wait a
motion.
minute. Senator Dance has been waiting patiently. Senator Dance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope I can remember what I wanted to say. I received, I'm sure the press release is out there, a statement from the governor
Yes, ma'am.
in regards to this 64 or is it 63 pages substitute is a compromise. And he lists that from his office, he assigned the secretaries of natural resource and commerce and labor, as well as some stakeholders that included those folks who normally speak, the consumer advocates and other key stakeholders, conservation groups, all the Attorney General's office, because I understood early on, the Attorney General's office has concerns about this bill, and they seem to think that there is peace in the valley. But my concern is, I would like to know who, for me specifically, the consumer advocates who's speaking for the people. So if one of the secretariats or somebody could give me some names, so as far as the credibility of the people that are a part of this, to say there's peace in the valley, and that I am to believe that we are going to now be able to ensure that our customers get fair rates, and that the State Corporation Commission is going to be given the oversight. So who are they? Do we have the names of those groups that represent the consumer advocates? I am sure everyone else was at the table. But can somebody give me some names of who those consumer advocates might have been?
Yes, ma'am, come forward.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dana Wiggins. I'm with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We did participate in the stakeholder process. I cannot say that I support the bill as of this moment. We still share the same concerns that Senator Stanley has. We still read the bill. As of my reading now and his reading, I still see it as a double charge. I don't see how that actually has been fixed. You know, there's many, many other things in the bill that we are happy to see in this piece of legislation, and we are happy that those investments are happening, but we definitely can't support the idea that for that same investment, we may be charged twice, particularly for low-income consumers, who is our main constituency we're worried about. We think there's a lot of other good things in this piece of legislation. You know, there's the energy efficiency investments, and, you know, I think those other investments that are predicated on those over earnings are good things to invest in. But we see both the fact that there may be the opportunity for them to both take the over earnings but also add it to the base rate. One, that's a double charge, but then also it raises the amount that's added to the rate base, and therefore the over earnings get smaller and smaller, which means they're not going to be as much to invest in those investments over time, if that makes sense. Those over earnings shrink, and therefore how long will those investments actually be taking place without having to ask for a rate adjustment clause? Those are our two main concerns.
Senator
Mr.
Nance.
Chairman, can I?
Wait, Senator Nance has the floor.
There are 64 pages here, and there's a lot of information, and a lot of people have given input. And normally in a compromise, you don't get everything you want, but you're saying that from what presented, there's a lot of good, but there's still that caveat of.
Well, I mean, I don't think I could be a proper consumer advocate if I said it was okay to double charge.
No, I'm not, I'm saying to you, that I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm saying that in a compromise, you don't get everything you want because
Sure,
you are compromising, but
Well,
I'm saying.
we definitely didn't get everything we wanted, I can say that.
But is there a lot of good in this bill, in this
There-
compromise?
We, for the purposes of low-income Virginians, we believe that energy efficiency investments are helpful, not as much as we had hoped to see. Obviously, considering that there will be
Compromise.
costs associated, and those other investments that we don't have a lot of particular opinion about, we do feel like if they're probably very good, but we just don't want to necessarily have people paying twice for them.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, while Mr. Rust is standing up there, I have a question. I just want to make sure I understand a couple things in this. Mr. Rust, so typically the SCC would determine, they do an audit and determine any over-earnings. Have they done that in this case?
They will do that in the triennial reviews. The first one for Dominion will be in 2021. The first one for APCO will be in 2020.
Okay. They'll determine how much was actually over-earned during this rate freeze?
Yes, sir. Ours will be for a 4-year period, and APCO's will be for a 3-year period.
Will they then actually, Mr. Chairman, will they then actually determine how much money goes back to the ratepayers?
Mr. Chairman, they will determine the amount of the over-earnings. We have the opportunity, if we have made the investments in the grid modifications, in the renewables, to offset that amount.
All right, let me ask my
Senator Stewart.
question a different way, Mr. Chairman. So we adopted this bill and imposed a rate freeze.
Yes.
And all of us thought it was the right thing to do at the time. And I would state today that I made a mistake when I voted for that bill. I would like to correct that mistake and give that money back to the ratepayers, that they were overcharged. Will this bill do that?
This bill makes substantial monetary contributions from Dominion and from APCO related to the prior periods. It also makes a down payment on 17, which is the $67 million that's coming in at the beginning of 2019.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Stewart.
does this give the over-earnings back to the ratepayers?
Yes, sir.
All of it?
The commission determined in its review of 2015, 2016, there was $133 million that would have been refunded. That's the initial credit that we do. We've also provided $67 million that will be paid in the beginning of 2019, which is a down payment on their determination in 2017.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Black.
Mr. Rust, am I correct that the amount of renewable energy that is provided by this is roughly the amount that would be required to supply 1.25 million citizens in Virginia?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Black, the number is the maximum output of the solar facility. It's what would be produced on a bright sunny day. Remember that solar power is intermittent. It's not going to produce that all the time. So what we're measuring is how much output the facility has at its capacity.
And Mr. Chairman.
Senator Black.
And when we're talking about that large a portion of the grid, we're going to have a tremendous amount of backup energy production, aren't we?
We're going to certainly have to find a way to do storage. That's part of the pump storage that we're looking at in the coal fields. It's part of what's already in place in Bath County. It's part of the battery storage that we're looking at. But yes, we need to find a way to preserve that power to use it. Yes, sir.
But, Mr. Chairman, with such a vast amount of our energy going into this, do we really have the technology even to store it, or do we just make it up with charging up a huge battery of diesel motors and powering it up that way?
Mr. Chairman, the storage solutions are still in a state of flux. That's one of the reasons we have the pilot program for battery storage. But it's a matter of balancing the grid more than anything else. Right now, if we have renewables producing more power than we can use, we don't have an ability to store it. That's what we would like to be able to find.
And, Mr. Chairman, if you were trying to produce energy at the lowest possible cost, would you be doing it with coal and oil and nuclear power, or would you be doing it with solar and with windmills?
Mr. Chairman, the question is a complicated question because it depends upon whether you're looking at fuel costs or not. Obviously, if you're looking at windmills, you're looking at solar, you have no fuel costs. If you're looking at coal, if you're looking at gas, you've got fuel cost that comes in. Right now, solar is a competitive amount.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we're reaching the stage where maybe an in-house person, if it would be okay to, and Senator Black, to put this in perspective, Bath County, which is an existing facility built in the early 80s, has a capacity of about 3,000 megawatts. We're looking at a facility in far southwest Virginia, which you all approved overwhelmingly last year, Senator Chafin's bill, of about another 1,000 megawatts. The other side of solar, though, we can no longer build coal due to environmental regulations. So all that we've got is gas. And gas is an excellent resource, something we're very supportive of, but it is volatile in terms of price, particularly until we get more pipeline capacity online. And what Solar acts as is a hedge against natural gas prices because it's got no fuel component. So it's not a question of gas or solar. The two of them work very well together because solar offsets the big disadvantage of gas, which is the fuel volatility, and gas offsets the big disadvantage of solar, which is that it doesn't run all the time. And on any of these investments, the way we would pay for them typically, under current law, is through a rate adjustment clause, which is a by definition rate increase in addition to the bill. What this bill says is any of these investments, what we do first is look to see can we do them in existing base rates with no rate increase and no rate adjustment clause. And the bill specifically says you cannot raise rates during the life of this act, which is 10 years, based on any of these new investments. Anyway, I hope that's a helpful perspective.
All right, no, and just, you're aware that back 20 years ago, the price of natural gas was $10.
Yes, sir.
And now it's about $3.50.
Yes, sir. Well, it's about $3.50. I can tell you during the recent cold snap, we were paying well north of $150 for natural gas per unit because we didn't have enough pipeline capacity. So that's a case for additional pipeline capacity. That's not the issue in this bill, but it also shows the value of having a source that does not have a fuel component. What we saw during the recent 3-degree weather that we were going through, we need all of the above. It's not a matter of either or. We need all of these different resources because they work together, which is the key, sort of the point of the key point of the bill.
Thank you. Yes, it did.
Mr. Chairman, I do know that there are a number of people that are supporters of the bill that would like to speak, and I don't want to exclude them from having an opportunity to do so.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Just Senator Obenshain.
So I can speed this along, and let me make a motion that we amend and remove the 5,000 megawatt language from the bill.
Second.
We can kill it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that that language be stricken from the bill. Let me tell you, the chair does not support that. This is a key part of the bill. This has been an important compromise. If this bill was somehow not to go through, then we're back in an environment where we continue on with the rate freeze and no action takes forward. But the motion's been made to take it out, and it's been seconded. I hope the committee would see that. Go ahead, Mark.
Speaking to that, let me just say, I think it's great that solar is becoming much more affordable. I think it is becoming economical. I don't quibble with or take issue with the representations that it is becoming a competitive source of energy, and I don't mean to be a fly in the ointment and to cause a challenge here, but I think that AEP and Dominion ought to be able to make this determination, and it ought to be reviewed by the State Corporation Commission as to whether it's in the best interest of the ratepayers, and I'm not comfortable making that determination here on the fly on the basis of, and my good friend, Mr. Russ, I don't distrust him, I don't question the representations, but I'm making a determination on the basis of extremely low information. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that it is improvident to make that determination as a legislative body, and I would so move.
It's been moved and seconded, Senator Obenshain, and let me just say this, that while you may not have been involved in it, I can assure you I've been neck deep in this for the better part of the last 3 years. I've looked at it very closely, and I will tell you something, just because you say put it up doesn't mean the SCC is going to look for the most competitive environment, so they still have input in this. Let me also add that just because you say put it up, it's up tomorrow. Let me assure you, there are many, many hurdles that have to pass in order to do this, not the least of which is trying to get a permit, trying to get localities to sign off on it. And then for the larger scale solars, you have to go to the grid coordinator, PJM. And these are very thoughtful, very studied, and we'll try to get a permit to put these in. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but we have seen time and again in this committee that the SCC, despite the intentions of this committee, and you've heard Senator Norman talk about it, you've heard me talk about it, you've heard Senator Saslaw talk about it repeatedly, that the SCC doesn't necessarily do what the intent of the General Assembly has been over and over and over again. And while I applaud them for their ability to look and go through the utilities rate structure, I also don't feel the confidence there to take a broader view of what's in the best interest of our grid and what's in the best interest of the long-term views of Virginia. Without that, and I do think that we as a policy-making job, and that's our job here in the General Assembly, it's altogether appropriate that the policymakers do what they're supposed to do and do why they sent us up here, and that is to make policy. And to say that 5,000 megawatts, which is about a little over 2 power plants of new generation, actually it's 3 power plants, excuse me, approaching 4, is in the best interest, I think is altogether appropriate. And it is our job to set the policy, and that's what we're trying to do here. But it's got to have a motion and a second to 5,000. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? No. Okay, and the chair, the noes have it. The bill stays as is. Jack, we've been at this now for almost an hour, probably a little over an hour. We have heard this during the subcommittee.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to ask those in favor of the bill to come up, state they're in favor of the bill, and tell us who they are. And then I'll do the same thing for the opposition, and then we're going to have a vote. So all those in favor, come on up. There are men.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wagner, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Matt Strickler. I'm serving as Governor Northam's Secretary of Natural Resources. On behalf of the Governor, I'd like to offer support for the substitute bill and related amendments before you today. Over the past week, we have worked with a group of stakeholders, including utilities, the conservation community, clean energy companies, consumer advocates, and manufacturers to improve upon legislation designed to lift a freeze on electric utility rates, promote clean energy, and modernize the grid.
Okay, we got it. The governor's in favor of it. Thank you. We appreciate it. If you saw the rest of the docket, you'd say, move on.
Appreciate it.
Michael.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Town, Virginia League of Conservation Voters. Thank you to you, Mr. Chairman, to the birthday boy from Falls Church. We are supportive of the legislation. It's not perfect, but we think that this is a good step forward and we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, DeJuan Robinson, Natural Resources Defense Council. We support the bill as well. A compromise means you don't necessarily get everything you want. And while we also agree the bill is not perfect, it does move us in the right direction. We're happy to support it.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tyson with Apex Clean Energy based in Charlottesville, Virginia. 200 employees in Virginia, and we commend you for adding a wind in addition to solar in the public interest. I've got a handout here I'd like to leave for staff that is going to include how complementing wind and solar together does help address some of those intermittency concerns that were raised. So I think it's a wise move.
We got it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea Harnish. I'm with the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, Hayes Fromme, representing Orsted, the largest offshore wind developer in the world, and we support the legislation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassey, Virginia Manufacturers Association. I'd like to start by telling you a story. Mr. Chairman.
And I'll tell you one too. Okay.
We have been working on this a long time, and as of noon today, we do support this bill. We appreciate the help. We do want to point out to everybody's concerned about pricing, we are probably the most price-sensitive industry in the Commonwealth. Enactment Clause 18 has a specific directive to watch the electricity prices per kilowatt hour for each customer class and look at our fuel diversity and how we compare and compete against all 50 states. This is a critical component of the bill that was added this morning, and we think that this is the item that you'll be able to look to every 12 months to see if we're on track.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Laura Bateman, and I'm representing the Alliance for Industrial Efficiency, who supports this bill as a great effort to help with combined heat power and waste to power systems and improve Virginia's capacity for those projects.
Thank you, Laura.
Mr. Chairman, Scott McGarry, Washington Gas. We support the bill because of issues in common with respect to energy efficiency, and also commend Senator Sturda for his initiative in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Josh Levy, Northern Virginia Technology Council. Also want to register our support for this legislation.
Thank you, Josh.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ryan Dunn with the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We also support the legislation.
Thanks, Ryan.
Mr. Chairman, Chris West with Conservatives for Clean Energy. We support this for incorporating Senator Sturtevant's efficiency legislation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Mathias. I've been on the Virginia Offshore Wind Development Authority since inception. Y'all kickstarting this project with the wind energy certainly will be helpful to diversifying the economy and creating new jobs in Hampton Roads.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Ron Jefferson, Appalachian Power. We support the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, last statement, if you'll look on page 35 of the bill at lines 912 to 916, it's clear that you cannot have a rate increase from the investments that are being made in the grid and the renewables.
Bill, he's answering where it is in the bill.
Page 35, lines 912 through 916. This bill is about rates. It's about keeping rates low. It's about keeping rates stable and providing a basis to have these improvements made without charging customers more. And that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's hear from the opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I don't want to rehash what I said during the subcommittee hearing this morning, although for the benefit of those who were not there, I'll be happy to answer any questions. My name is Sam Towell. I'm the Deputy Attorney General for Civil Litigation, which encompasses the Office of Consumer Counsel, and it is in that capacity that our comments are offered. We see many valuable things in this legislation, but wearing our Consumer Counsel hat, we oppose the bill as it's currently constructed for two reasons in particular. One, the
I think we got
recovery.
it. I think we got it. We're moving along. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Bob Shipley, Sierra Club, Virginia. We do agree there's some good things in this bill. I think Senator Stanley nailed the double dip issue. Lawyers have looked at that and agree that that's still a problem. And again, Dana spoke to the refund issue. We believe the SEC should determine that number.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Anderson with Appalachian Voices. We oppose the bill for the reasons just stated by the Sierra Club, especially the double dipping mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Harrison Wallace with the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. We also oppose the bill for the same reasons as that Voices and Sierra Club on the double dipping issue and SEC authority over the refunds.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edward Petrini on behalf of the Virginia Committee for Fair Utility Rates and the Old Dominion Committee for Fair Utility Rates, large industrial customers of Dominion and Appalachian Power respectively. We oppose the bill. We believe it effectively extends the excess revenues already being collected in the rates of Dominion and Appalachian Power rather than allowing the Commission to eliminate.
We heard
or
that this
reduce
morning. We
those-
got it in the
those
subcommittee.
revenues.
Thank you so
Mr. Chair.
much. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and patrons of the bill, my name is Tony Smith, CEO of Secure Futures and member of the Virginia Distributed Solar Alliance.
You oppose the bill?
I want to suggest a friendly amendment to it.
You suggested it today at the subcommittee. Did you get any patrons to present the amendment?
No, sir, I was.
Seeing
informed.
none, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We are neither supportive or opposed to the bill. Our main concern still has to do with the fact if the offsets from the over earnings were then used to actually offset what was added to the base rate as cost, we would have less heartburn over the bill. But as it's actually written, not intended maybe, but as it's actually written, that is not the case.
Okay, well, you're an excellent finish up because you're neither for or against the bill. So with that, we have spent over an hour on that, and for the members of the committee, believe me, that's just the beginning. So, committee operates by. First of all, let's take Senator Sturtevant's bill, and the guts of it are already incorporated in the bill. Is there a motion to roll Senator Sturtevant's bill in?
So moved.
901, Senate Bill 901. It's been moved and seconded. Senate Bill 901 be rolled in. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that bill. And then there's a second motion that Senator Saslaw's bill be 966 be rolled into 966. Is there a second
So
on that
moved.
motion?
Second.
Okay, there's been moved and seconded that that bill be rolled into Senate Bill 966. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the bill's before us. Is there a motion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman, just briefly,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded the bill be reported. Senator Cosgrove.
just briefly, I want to thank Secretary Strickland. He didn't get a chance to really say all was on his mind, but we know how hard y'all have worked on this. So I just want to say thank you for doing that, and I think we all feel that way. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On the proposed amendments? Oh, the open chain amendments. All right, if you were supportive of the open chain amendments, just raise your hands, if you would. If you remember open chain's amendments, there was 1, 2, 3. There they are. There they are. Now you got them recorded, okay? All right. Been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 966 be reported.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Obenchain.
And just real briefly, I still have the concerns that I expressed, I'm going to look forward to learning a little bit more about this bill over the next couple of days as it percolates towards the floor. I thank you and the participants in I guess the working group for the work that you all did. I think it's critically important that we help the ratepayers of Virginia. My concerns are not alleviated, but I think that it's so important that we do something, and this seems to be the only vehicle still alive. I'm going to continue to look at it, but I'm going to vote for this today.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I want to thank you all as well. I know you've worked very hard on it. You brought a lot of people together on this. It made it particularly difficult for me because you're undergrounding this Haymarket project, which is an area up in my district, and it's caused a great deal of consternation, and I know the folks would like it. But, Mr. Chairman, I can't get past the fact that we're not giving the money back to the ratepayers, and we're not giving the SCC the oversight that the SCC should have. And this is not a reflection of Dominion. Dominion is a regulated utility, and we, the General Assembly, are supposed to set these policies. And we made a mistake before. It was a mistake in good faith, and I think we should thoroughly correct that mistake by getting rid of the rate freeze, giving the SEC the oversight, and giving people their money backs that they were overcharged. So I can't support the bill.
Senator Saslow.
Let me tell you, this is not just been the work of just the people you see up here and some of the people there. There's a lot of people, 25 to 30 people, representing every aspect of the Commonwealth, have had inputs into this bill. And one of the sticking points was what was raised by Senator Stanley. And I got to tell you, when he was in the General Assembly and as an attorney, Jack Rust had a reputation as one of the brightest guys in this city. And if he tells you that this thing cannot be double counted, you can pretty much take that to the bank, because probably a court would find the same way. So I think they've solved the problem of that. And, there is going to be SCC oversight. What we've done is we've tried to tell them that in the future, this is where we want to move the state. And long term, which is what this bill is about, we're going to be better off moving towards renewables than we are towards, using fossil fuel. And as far as rates are concerned, as I pointed out before, our rates are cheaper than all the surrounding states, with the possible exception of West Virginia. They mine and I guess burn coal all the time. As far as Maryland's concerned, when they had that clean power plan where they were supposed to be by 2030, we were almost there already. And as far as carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour. So this moves it down the field. And, to the Virginia Poverty Law Center, who is concerned, we've doubled the money that's being spent in helping out, the people who, A, can't pay their bills, and B, people who homes need to be weatherized, but they don't have the money. And so
this bill does a lot of good for a lot of people. Is it perfect? Of course not. But it represents the work of an awful lot of people. And I think on the whole, it's a pretty darn good bill.
And I just want to make one last comment before we vote here, and that is to Senator Stewart's claim. There was $133 million being returned, plus additional $67 million in 2019. And then we're going to true up the rates. So yes, there's going to be a substantial refund, if you will, to plus, yeah, another 100. Well, thank you, Senator Saslaw's comments here from the right. But there is a substantial one, and let's go back to the premise. These rates are going to be back to what people paid in 2009, and you can pick and you can nitpick, but the rates will be the same as they were in 2009, yet a whole lot of great things are going to be accomplished in terms of modernizing our grid, hardening our grid, and allowing our grid to accommodate renewables and bring them online. You know, you can sit here and argue back and forth and not have change, but change is coming, and it's very clear that change is coming. The technology is not a question of if the technology's here. The question is Virginia going to embrace it? Is Virginia going to move forward with that technology? And I happen to think that this is the appropriate time to make the move. This is the appropriate setting to do it. This is a grid transformation bill here that'll really move us forward. And with that, I think everybody's talked that wants to talk. So, Clerk, open the rolls.
Ten ayes, 4 nays.
Okay, the bill is reported. Thank you all very much for that. We'll go back to patrons. Senator Edwards, you're next on my list.
Hour-long presentation. I guess I'll have an hour for each of my bills. So, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 313, Community Solar Generation Facilities, there is a substitute, and I would ask that the substitute be delivered. And there's some people that can explain the substitute better than I can, quite honestly.
Okay, is there a motion on a substitute? Been moved and seconded the substitute be agreed to Senate Bill 82. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us.
Okay.
Senator Edwards or Senator Edwards proxy?
Yeah. Somebody can explain it, but I think the parties have been accommodated based on
All
this.
right. All right, let's have it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tony Smith with Secure Futures. We want to support this bill. It's a very important bill. It establishes the possibility for community solar generation facilities. We need more jobs and investment in Virginia, and this represents a very innovative approach for Virginia, although very proven approach in other states that allows for communities to benefit from the shared benefits of through subscriptions of community solar. Community solar has been developed at the utility scale. This is an approach to parallel that effort with community scale with individual subscribers. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I apologize earlier about that. It's not normally my way, but you were asked earlier to find a patron for the amendment, and you still had not had one. So,
I understand, sir.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Susan Stillman with the Sierra Club. This is an opportunity to bring private capital to invest in solar community gardens, and we think it's a great bill. As Tony said, there's a utility scale arrangement. This would allow the individuals, the people who live in houses that are too shady or people who live in apartments that can't put solar on their residences to invest in solar and see the returns of that investment. So we support it.
Thank you. Are there others in support of the bill? Is anyone opposed to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Andrew V. Horn with the Electric Co-ops. You mentioned the collaboration process that's been going on for several years, the Rubin Group. One of the key things that came out of that was a community solar bill last year. There was a subscription model that 5 of our co-ops currently have applications before the commission on that haven't been approved yet. So we think this is a little premature. Would like to see that process play out.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Catherine Bob, Dominion Energy, we are opposed to the legislation for a couple of reasons. One, and I don't have the substitute version, but on the filed version, line 66 through 69 specify that there's no regulation by the commission of these various utilities that we'll set up. It also specifies that all the energy must be sold to the utilities, but does not specify that price. Without oversight or determination what that price is, we simply can't support the legislation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Ron Jefferson, Appalachian Power, and I associate my comments to Dominion.
Thank you. Okay. Senator Edwards, I think we understand.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I want
Senator McDougal.
Senator Edwards, so if this will be private individuals setting up facilities and selling it to entities, whether they be in the co-ops or two of the largest regulated utilities, what rate will they be paying these private individuals?
Well, it doesn't say what the rate will be.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, if it does not specify that it is the wholesale rate, then that means that all the rate players would be subsidizing individuals to set up these entities, and that would cause me great concern.
The way these community solar facilities work, it's a negotiated rate. It's a voluntary participation in the subscription. And the experience has been nationally that these types of solar facilities do not have a negative impact on other ratepayers.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McDougal.
So would you be opposed to us amending this to say that the rate could not be paid more than wholesale cost?
Senator, I think there's several components to an electric bill that includes not only the wholesale cost, but the distribution and transmission charges.
Senator McDougal, if I can make a suggestion, we have the Rubin Group, and that's the appropriate place so that we don't spend hours in front of the committee. Generally speaking, it's white smoke comes from this. And
I thought it was pretty well resolved.
I think an appropriate motion might be that we carry this bill over and refer it by letter to the Rubin Group to ask them to look at these things so that all concerned parties can sit down and review this bill. We just passed a bill out of here that called for 5,000 megawatts of new solar. And you know, clearly I think the Rubin Group, that's what it's established for, is to take these particular issues up. And so the chair would definitely been moved and seconded that the bill be carried over and that I write a letter to refer it over to the Rubin and get
Mr.
back
Chairman.
to us on the thing.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. Just in your letter, Mr. Chairman, can you express some of the concerns that we had here about basically the wholesale price, the distribution prices, the lack of SEC oversight? Can you put that in your letter as well, please?
It's done. Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Clerk, open the rolls. Okay, that bill is carried over.
13 ayes, 0
Edwards.
nays.
Okay.
Senate Bill 311 is similar to that. It's this has to do with solar community gardens. You might want to do the same thing. Send it to the Rubin Group. Get them to look at it.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 83 be referred to the Rubin Group with a letter from me. All those in favor indicate. What's that? Oh, what bill was it? 83.
311. Well, 311.
311. Okay, 311. Okay, clerk, open the rolls. Okay, that bill's carried over. 313, Senator Edwards, you're on a roll.
Senate Bill 82 has to do with agricultural net metering. What this does, first of all, do you have the, okay, we have a substitute to unstrike the language from.
Okay, is there a motion on the substitute? Been moved and seconded, the substitute be adopted. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the bill's before us. Senator
Basically,
Edwards.
it unstrikes the language in line 27 through 31 that's in the introduced bill. So it goes back to that. It simply adds falling water to the eligible agricultural customer generator. It means a customer that operates a renewable energy generating facility as part of an agricultural business, which generating facility one uses as its sole energy source solar power, wind power, and adds falling water. to that. And then it changes the capacity. Number two, does not have an aggregate generation capacity of more than, changes 500 kilowatts to 1.5 megawatts. Is that right, Frank? I think that's what it does.
Okay.
And then on line 41, it changes the served by multiple meters that are located on one parcel or a multiple parcels versus at separate and contiguous sites.
Okay. I think the committee understands the bill. Do you have anybody in support of the bill here with you? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kevin Maurer, Virginia Catholic Conference. We support the bill because we want to, as much as possible, include rural Virginians in the coming energy transition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Bob Shippey, Virginia Sierra Club. We support the bill.
Thank you. Opposition?
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray with Dominion. Our primary concern with the bill is on line 39. It's a major policy shift. Net metering has always been understood to be one single site, because the idea generally in net metering is you're getting full retail reimbursement. And this goes to a question on an earlier bill. What rate are you getting paid? You're getting paid not only for the generation, but you're essentially getting the distribution and transmission for free. The policy shift here to accommodate agricultural net metering, current law is to show flexibility, recognizing farmers often have adjacent parcels, that you could have contiguous parcels all go together to sort of offset the cost of one solar facility. This is now saying multiple facilities, so essentially doing what's called virtual net metering. There's no geographic limits, so they could be multiple parcels anywhere within a utility service territory, which for us is about 40% of Virginia's land area. And that's a very dramatic policy shift on net metering. For that reason, we would respectfully oppose the bill.
All right. I think we've heard both. Senator Edwards, the original bill that you read right now, the original language in the code was as a result of the actions of the Rubin Group. And it would be my recommendation that we do the same thing and have them look at these particular things. That's what Mr. Murray pointed out was a pretty clear shift in the way they look at things. And so it's been moved and seconded that we add this to the list of bills to refer to the Rubin Group. Clerk, open the rolls. Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Edwards, you have another bill.
Yeah, Senate Bill 83, you probably want to do the same thing.
Okay. Is there a motion on Senate Bill 83? It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 83 be carried over to next session with a letter to the Rubin Group. Clerk, open the rolls. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Senator Edwards. Okay, Senator McClellan, you've been patiently waiting.
Thank you. I have Senate Bill 908. You may recall that back in 2011, we passed legislation to allow any person to provide an electronic vehicle charging station for a fee without becoming a public utility, public service corporation, or public service company, because technically, as the law was written, they would fall in the definition of one of those three, and it would open them up to the entire panoply of regulations that public utilities, public service companies are required to follow. And we did that because we recognized that we needed to have more infrastructure in place to support the growing electric vehicle industry. Then in 2017, we extended that same authority to local school boards. Since then, there are localities, our colleges and universities, and state parks that are also interested in providing electric vehicle charging stations. If they do so for free, they can do that under current law. But as you know, it is pretty expensive to operate and provide an electric charging station. And so this would allow local governments, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and our institutions of higher education and community colleges to also be able to provide electric charging stations for free without becoming public utilities, public service corporations. And that's the bill.
There are questions for the page.
Mr. Chairman.
I do have
Senator.
amendments
Okay.
after your questions.
Okay. Senator Cosgrove.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, this says retail fee-based electric vehicle charging stations.
Right. So
I guess my question would be, is there any requirement that the entity at least recoup its cost of providing that power?
that is how they would do that. So right now, they can do a charging station for free, but they eat the cost. The only way they can charge under current law is if they become a full-fledged public utility or public service company. So this allows them to charge a fee without becoming a public utility. And it provides that the fee basically would only be the portion of their electric service that they pay that they use in the vehicle charging station.
Okay. Any other questions? You have amendments.
I do. They're line amendments that were requested by VACO and adopted in the other body.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to report
Yeah,
them?
please.
There are three amendments. The first is on line 19. After owns or leases, strike comma provided and insert period, a locality may provide. And then in that same sentence, it would continue on line 20, after authorized visitors and strike is accompanied by appropriate, insert may install. And then continue with signage that provides, and then strike the word reasonable.
And basically what the amendments do, and they were requested by VACO, I think I said VML, it allows a locality to limit the charging station to employees and visitors, but it doesn't require them to do so.
Okay. Does the committee understand the amendments? Do I hear a motion on the amendments? Then move to second, the amendments be adopted. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, those amendments are adopted. Do you have anyone speak in favor of the bill?
I think, yes. Briefly, I hope.
Chairman Wagner, members of the committee, Bob Shippey, Virginia Sierra Club. We thank the patron and fully support this bill. Spoiler alert, Sierra Club and Dominion are on the same side of this one, so I hope you'll support it. Thanks.
Okay.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Joe Lurch with Virginia Association of Counties, and also speaking on behalf of the Virginia Municipal League. And as explained by the senator with the amendments, we support the bill as a local option. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Murray with Dominion Energy. As previously noted, we do support the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Alexander McCauley for EVgo. We build the electric vehicle charging stations, and we support the bill.
Oh, wow. Okay. Is there anyone opposed to this fine piece of legislation? All right. Been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 908 be reported as amended. All those, clerk, open the rolls.
Fourteen ayes, 0 nays.
Okay.
Thank
That
you.
bill's reported. Thank you, Senator McClellan. Next is Senator Suderline. He's on his way. Next is Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My bill is Senate Bill 191. I do have an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
All right. Is there a motion on a substitute? Been moved and seconded to substitute to Senate Bill 908.
I'll be very,
Agreed to? No, it's not 908. What bill is it?
it's 191.
191. All right. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us. Senator
Okay,
Favola.
thank you. What this bill does is it allows for an investor-owned utility to enjoy up to 125% capacity for a solar generator, if you will. Electric co-op would stay at 100%, and it would allow the agricultural or residential or corporation, whatever the solar generator, if you will, through a purchase agreement to sell any excess energy back to the grid at wholesale costs. And that's essentially the bill. I have worked with Dominion and with the Sierra Club and with folks interested in energy, co-op energy groups. So I respectfully ask that the committee pass this. I probably have some speakers here, I hopefully in favor.
They're lining up behind you.
Okay.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Ivy Main with the Sierra Club, but I also write an energy blog, and in that capacity, I hear often from solar consumers, people who've run into problems with the current law in one way or another. And one of the things I've heard about several times is the frustration of being limited in the size of the solar array they can install to just what would have been necessary to meet their past demand. But if they are going solar as part of a renovation or they're buying an electric vehicle, they'd like to be able to supply enough electricity for those needs as well. So this is a very modest fix. There's no financial incentive to a consumer for doing this because you can't sell any surplus back at retail. You either forfeit it to the utility, or if you sign a power purchase agreement, you can get basically wholesale. But so the only reason you would do this is if you genuinely are going to be having a higher usage. So there are a lot of consumers who would appreciate this really small change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy. We do support the legislation and thank the patron for her hard work. I will point out on starting on line 115, it does say that any excess will be purchased at wholesale market rates.
Okay. Is there anyone opposed to this legislation?
Chairman.
Yeah.
Just as we're talking about this, and I heard a lot from different groups like the Sierra Club worried about cost, one of the concerns that I have about the net metering project in general is that the ratepayers are paying more than the wholesale cost when the energy is purchased back from consumption. So I realized in your bill, this new part won't include that, but I do think we ought to be real when we're talking about the entire project of net metering. It does have the consumers paying individuals who are producing solar energy more than what it could be purchased on the grid in general. So they are subsidizing that and driving up costs for ratepayers. So something that I think we should really look at in the future, Mr. Chairman.
It wasn't lost on me, the concerns that rise on ratepayers and then disappear on other bills. That wasn't lost on me. But,
I was shocked by that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew V. Horn with the co-ops. I appreciate Senator Favola working with us to maintain the status quo, and we have no objections to the bill.
Okay, all right. Sounds like there's peace in the valley. Is there anyone opposed to this legislation? Okay, committee operates by motion. Been moved and seconded that the amendment in nature substitute to Senate Bill 191 be reported. Clerk, open the rolls. Thank you, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
13 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, now next is Senator Wexton. We called everybody. They didn't want to sit through the, okay. All right, Senator Donovan. Senator McPike, okay. All right, let's go back to patron bills. Let's take some easy ones till the other patrons get here. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 72 come before the committee.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 72 just requires that electric distribution lines installed after July 1st of 2018 upon or over agricultural land shall be placed at a height that is not less than the minimum height requirement that applies to the placement of such lines on the road crossings. I brought this because I was asked to bring this by the Farm Bureau. There's been some problems with low-hanging lines over agricultural land. We all know the size of some of these farm vehicles, and there's been some
Okay, and this is forward-looking,
Yes, sir.
doesn't
It is.
address the
Yes, it is
existing lines.
prospective.
Okay, any questions for Senator Cosgrove? Is there anyone, hang on a minute, is there anyone opposed to the legislation?
Mr. Chairman, Andrew V. Horn with the co-ops. Not so much opposed, but I wanted to make you aware that this is already current federal law. The National Electric Security Code requires agricultural land distribution lines to be the same height as road crossings. So to the extent that there's a problem here, this bill is not going to solve the problem that it's intending to.
Well, it's going to be in state law now, too, it sounds like, Andrew. Okay. It's been moved and seconded that the bill be reported. Senate Bill 72. All those in favor, or clerk open the rolls.
Could you vote me yes, please?
Got anything else, Senator Cosgrove?
No, sir, that's it.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on.
All right, wait a minute. All right.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, we got that. All right. Any patrons up here got easy ones here we can clear out? I know we got some tough ones, but Senator McDougal, you're just going to have to wait. Senator Chafin. He disappeared on me. He's got a bill here. All right, Senator Sasslaw, you got life insurance on minors. Want to take that one up?
Is it possible to carry that over?
For the year?
Well, till that, I think I may have, maybe we better strike it, because I think I may have created new problems.
Okay, at the request of the patron that the bill be stricken, clerk open the rolls. I'm sorry, 817. Okay, that bill is stricken from the docket. Let me just make an announcement. I apologize for not making it at the outset of the meeting, but I'm sure all of your lobbyists can spread the word. There will not be a meeting next Monday. The final meeting of Commerce and Labor will be this Wednesday, immediately after session, 20 minutes after session. We will work to clear our docket this Wednesday, so there will be no meeting on Monday of next week. So plan accordingly, and I forgot to make that announcement, but I'm sure the word will get out. So, all right, and the docket report will be everything that's remaining on the Commerce and Labor docket after today. All right, that takes care of that. I got a quick one over here, Senate Bill 853. If the committee would pay attention, Senate Bill 853 revises the provisions applicable to the deadlines by which insurance agents are required to comply with continuing education requirements applicable to licensed insurance agents. This measure also revises provisions regarding licensees who are exempt from continuing education requirements. The measure has a delayed effect of 1 January 2019 to get everybody in line for it. Are there any questions? Anyone wants to amplify? Yes, sir.
Joe Hudgens with Independent Insurance Agents of Virginia, and I'm also on the Insurance Contingent Education Board. We support this bill, and it's been thoroughly vetted by the Bureau of Insurance.
Okay.
Move to report.
Okay, it's been moved, and
Unless there are opponents.
are there any opponents to 853?
Move to report.
Seeing none. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Senate Bill 853 be reported. Clerk, open the rolls. Okay.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, that bill's reported. We got any patrons here? Let's see, who's next on the list? Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 646.
646, committee pay attention here. Go ahead, Senator McPike.
This bill sets to provide provisions within rate case studies where the framework where we are acquiring of natural gas or other pipe capacity, that to ensure that in the process, the rate case review can disallow when the acquisition of capacity itself is over what's needed for the distribution or the consumption for power generation. So you have two factors involved. What this sets out is to make sure those three things, distribution, production of power, as well as reasonable reserve, are allowed. But it would not allow the reimbursement of costs beyond those within reasonably submitted and through the transparent process of the rate cases itself. So it's a provision that makes sure that folks can't enter into, for instance, contracts before rate cases, or at least they're taking on a burden of risk in that transparent and rate case study and review. And this is an important, I think, framework as we look at these type of cases to make sure that we have sort of a fair crack at what rates are going to be coming back to the consumers. Inevitably, any of these items are acquired or purchased, they do get passed back to ratepayers.
Senator McPike, how do you define adequate? Is the date they pick the coldest cold vortex? And when not just the utility is generating electricity off that pipeline, but also the gas utilities are drawing to maximum effect. Is that building to that capacity?
That would be a part of reasonable, the projections in terms of whether you have hot, cold, different spikes. That's all built into how companies are projecting into what they need to acquire.
Well, Senator McPike, maybe,
In terms of
maybe
the-
I'll frame the question a little bit differently. Do they project to what we propose to be the median, and that's all the capacity will allow them to charge, and then on cold days, just tell the rest of the clients, sorry, but we just can't get you the heat? Or
I
do they
think-
project pipeline capacity and all the existing, and do you anticipate any growth within the legislation? Like the economy might actually grow and the needs for utilities, given that these projects take anywhere from 10 to 20 years to get permitted?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Line 97 includes the language of reasonable reserve margin. Rate cases are often submitted with margins of growth projections within them, whether you're dealing with KVA lines, electric distribution line cases, natural gas lines. All those are already built into the submissions to the State Corporation Commission. That wouldn't change any of those provisions, simply list out what those provisions are and allow them to be reviewed like any normal rate case.
Well, I'd submit they probably screwed it up 20 years ago because we just ran out of gas in Hampton Roads at the last cold snap and had to curtail the naval base, had to shut down Busch Gardens, or not Busch Gardens, but Anheuser-Busch refinery, simply because the capacity was not even there to meet that. So whoever made this decision 20 years ago probably messed up because we didn't have sufficient gas to do that. Are there any questions for the patron? Do you have anybody in support of the bill, Senator McCraig? Yeah, Senator Black.
Just recalling earlier testimony about that at a certain point, Dominion was paying $150 for natural gas, up from $3.50. It seems like it's awfully difficult to predict what is within the reasonable range of expectations, and to say, that's the capacity that we should allow. I just wonder, as legislators, do you think we're really, well equipped to do that? Wouldn't that be something that the Corporation Commission would be better off dealing with?
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly the point of this bill. To respond to the senior senator from Loudoun, is to, in fact, make sure that that is the purview of the State Corporation Commission. And in fact, it's a risk mitigation tool, right? Say you want to quadruple the amount of capacity, but it provides a framework that says, wait a second, you've got a financial interest to make sure it's within that reasonable reserve period. What if you spend $5 billion that you didn't need to? Guess what? Right now, all that's passed back to the ratepayers. This provides a reasonable measure that allows multiple things within the bill during normal distribution, consumption, all the requirements that are there, but allows some risk factors to say, hey, if you go over those factors, you're somewhat at risk. Right now, there's no risk and there's no transparency to the process.
Okay. Yeah, people support? Yes, sir.
Chairman Wagner, members of the committee, Bob Shippey, Sierra Club, we support the bill.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Will Cleveland. I'm an attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center. I do a lot of work at the commission. I want to thank the patron for this bill. As I see it, this bill is designed purely as a protection for the cost and the ratepayers. Right now, there are lots of different pipelines in Virginia. The utilities have contracts on a lot of those pipelines. They pay 100% of those contracts regardless of how much they use them. They pass on 100% of those costs to their customers regardless of how much they use them. And there is no study being done to make sure that they don't have excess capacity under contract. This has nothing to do with the price that you pay for the commodity of natural gas. It's how much you're paying for the capacity on the pipelines. We support the bill. Thank you.
Excuse me for a minute. But
Yes,
it
sir.
has nothing to do with how much you pay for the commodity?
No, sir, it doesn't. Are
you telling me that if we had sufficient pipeline capacity, we wouldn't have seen a price spike to over $100 per decatherm here 2 weeks ago if we'd had sufficient capacity in the state that wouldn't have happened? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, Mr. Chairman, what I'm saying is that the price that the utilities pay for capacity is a separate price from what they pay for the commodity. And as I see it, this bill is not designed to
I
limit what they pay for the
understand. If we
commodity.
had sufficient capacity, we wouldn't have seen that $170 price spike that every ratepayer in Virginia is going to pay for. Would you
Mr. Chairman, I
disagree with that
can't-
comment?
I don't know the answer to that comment,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is anyone opposed to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray from Dominion Energy. I'll just make a couple quick points. First, when we talk about fuel costs, those are decided in a different sort of proceeding from other types of investments that you heard about earlier. Through the various regulatory regimes, the state has generally kept the same approach to fuel, and that is it's an annual true-up. Fuel, there's no markup, there's no profit, it's just math. It's a straight pass-through to customers in the same fashion the taxes have been over the years. The situation you're referring to, Senator, is a function of right now there's not enough pipeline capacity in Virginia for utilities to buy firm contracts where you get firm capacity on a pipeline. So you're essentially getting only that you're exposed to these types of extreme capacity price spikes. Now the commodity nationally during that very cold weather moved up a couple dollars from $3.50 or so that Senator Black had referenced to the $5 or $6 range. We were paying consistently above $150 a unit because there's not enough pipeline capacity. And for those of you from Northern Virginia, think of that as an I-66 toll that lasted for 2 solid weeks, a high congestion toll for 2 solid weeks. That's one concern we have with the bill. There's an existing.
Am I wrong to think that all those costs will be passed directly onto the consumer?
It's a straight dollar for dollar recovery annually, typically around July 1. The time in the order varies a little bit. But our costs, we are still tallying up the costs, but they're north of $150 million in additional fuel costs from that 2-week period. The other concern, Mr. Chairman, this bill is the elephant in the room. Dominion on the gas side of the company is developing the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. The commission has existing authority to look at transactions between affiliate companies. They've not been shy in exercising that authority, and by setting criteria, you're limiting their overall discretion to look in the public interest. And again, in fuel, it's not a case of markup. It's not a case of profit. We've had a very real-world example of the consequences of inadequate pipeline capacity in our state, and it doesn't just hit electric utilities. It hits manufacturing in particular, in your area in particular, Mr. Chairman, but throughout our service territory, industrial customers were curtailed, meaning they couldn't either operate either at all or to full capacity because the priority was getting the limited pipeline capacity to serve first home heating and then electricity generation. The third and very important role of natural gas that has not been mentioned in the previous testimony is for manufacturing. And for those reasons, we would respectfully oppose the bill.
Okay. All right. I think we've heard it. Senator McPike, is there anything you'd like to wrap up with?
Sir, just to wrap up, I mean, I'm surprised by Dominion's opposition. This has no provisions in this bill whatsoever that would restrict the addition of capacity. Nothing in the bill. There's simply 6 lines of this bill laying out a transparent process. If they submit the case of what they need, they can build it. It's very clear in this legislation. It's simply to do with the transparency of the process and what is laid out and what can be passed back to the ratepayer. That's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Senator McPike, we were talking similar numbers over the life of a re-regulation bill and a grid transformation bill that caused an awful lot of concern from a lot of people, including some of the people that just testified on behalf of your bill. We just heard from Dominion that the ratepayers are going to absorb $150 million in cost due to excess fuel over these last 2 weeks of the polar vortex. That is comparable to the numbers that we were talking about simply because we don't have the pipeline capacity on the commodity. If we'd had it, could have bought for $6 a decatherm as opposed to $150 a decatherm. So anyway, the committee operates by motion. Senator McPike's wrapped it up. It's been moved and seconded that the bill be passed by indefinitely. Clerk, open the rolls. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
11 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, next on the list is Senator Suderline. Yes, sir. What bill do you have for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got Senate Bill 837.
Okay. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When Virginia re-regulated electricity service in 2007, it retained options for consumers to continue purchasing electricity from competitive suppliers. However, these options have severe limitations and virtually no customers are shopping today despite growing interest. My bill proposes 3 changes to lessen the barriers to entry there to allow the original goal to be achieved. The first one, which is the most significant in my mind, reduces the advance notice to return utility service from 5 years to 3 months. Today, if a Virginia business chooses a competitive supplier but decides to switch back, it must give a utility a 5-year advance notice in return, which is the highest I could find anywhere in the United States. Other states have ranges between 30 days or 60 days, showing that the provision is clearly not driven by operational or reliability needs. Second, it gives customers true choice to allow competitive suppliers to sell 100% renewable energy, even if the incumbent offers its own renewable tariff. Because Virginia law prohibits competitive choice, if the incumbent utility offers a 100% renewable product, potential providers and capital investors have stayed away from the Commonwealth. Neither utility has successfully created or marketed products much in the last decade. Polls show that several businesses of a variety of sizes are interested in shopping, which brings me to point 3, which would reduce the shopping eligibility threshold from 5 megawatts to 1 megawatt. At 5 megawatts, you have to be a super purchaser to qualify. Think like data centers. 1% would bring you down to like poultry plants and apartment complexes.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for the patron? Do you have anybody to support the bill?
Yes, I believe they're here, although I was in general law, so I haven't rendezvoused with them yet.
It appears they're rendezvousing with you right now, Senator Suline.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you very much. I'm Fraser Blaylock from Covanta Energy. We operate 2 large-scale waste-to-energy facilities in Virginia. We support the bill because we would like the opportunity to be able to sell electricity to neighboring customers who would like to buy electricity directly from us. At this point, because of the barriers mentioned by the patron, we're not able to do so. We'd like to see an open market whereby companies and employers in the Commonwealth would be able to buy electricity directly from independent, renewable, base load power, okay? Base load power, this isn't wind and solar, this is 24/7 electricity fueled by trash, which is basically municipal infrastructure in the Commonwealth. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Senator. My name's Tom Flake. I'm with Because, a large data center operator in Hampton Roads. We'd like to speak in support of the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Joe Renslow. I'm with the Employers for Renewable Energy. We represent thousands of jobs in the Commonwealth, brand names such as Walmart, Target, Home Depot, H&M, IKEA, and others. Many of you may have gotten a letter in support of this legislation today. These groups have identified barriers to renewable energy procurement across the country. They view it as an economic development issue in terms of the Commonwealth being able to attract businesses that are in expansion plans from across the country. So these businesses are choosing to procure renewable energy for its cost effectiveness, and they want as many options as possible to make the Commonwealth competitive. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Ivy Main for the Sierra Club. We support this bill. We think competition is good for consumers, good for business, and good for renewable energy development. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Leonard Pulley. I'm president of EA Power. We support this bill. We're energy brokers. We have about 600 megawatts of load in the state. We haven't talked to one of our customers who agree that this 5-year minimum stay is the correct way to do things. It's akin to someone, a cable company telling you have to come back can't come back for 5 years. It's what's stopping competition or an ability, and I assume was the spirit of the 2007 bill, was for you to be able to pick a supplier. This eliminates that possibility. I'd like to mention too, Bob from iFly, the CEO of iFly, that you know, sir, has asked me to convey to you that he supports this bill also. In particular, we're concerned about the 5-year minimum stay, an amendment to the 5-year minimum stay requirement being moved down to 3 months.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
What? Well, if y'all offer such a good deal, why would anybody ever want to come back?
Well, we've heard that before. So when you go with a supplier, you may go with that supplier, and let's say Dominion Power does lower their rates where they beat the market rate. Right now, Dominion is not beating the market rate. Let's say they do. And let's say you go with the supplier, and it takes you some time to learn if you like that supplier, just like a cable provider or anything else. You discover if you like that provider or not. Let's say it takes a year or two to decide if you like their pricing, their product, them. Then by the time you have to give your 5-year notice, it's not 5, it's 7 years out then. And this is a good thing for Dominion, in our opinion. This is a little bit of competition, which again, we thought was the spirit of the 2007 bill, will make them leaner, more efficient. You know, they have to compete. It's like a boxer who he trains with a bag all the time. He's not leaner, he's not efficient, he's not more productive. But you put someone who spars with him in front of him, then he's sharper. We believe that will happen to Dominion. I love Dominion. I'm from here. When I was disabled, I was in I had a major injury from a military operation. When I moved back here to recover, Dominion was responsible for employment. I was a design interface engineer. So we're not adversaries of Dominion at all. And we believe this helps Dominion, not hurts them, as was the reasoning.
I think we'll let Dominion speak for themselves.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Tom Cosgrove for Newport News Shipbuilding. While I'll stay neutral on the bill, it does raise an issue that is important to us, which is the ability to explore competitive markets and make what we think is the best and most cost-effective business decision relating to our electric supplier. And we have felt over time that the 5-year waiting period is prohibitive to us being able to make those types of decisions. Whether this is the bill and this is the correct option or not is something for the committee and the General Assembly to decide, but we do think it's an issue that's important and that we would like to see some revision to.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris West with Conservatives for Clean Energy. We support this bill because it will help expand renewable energy in the Commonwealth.
I think we just did that a minute ago, but okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Matt Benedetti representing Microsoft and the Home Depot, and both companies support this bill.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Brian Smith with WGL Energy, and we also support this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are those opposed to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray with Dominion Energy, and we are opposed to the bill. And apologize, this will take just a brief minute or two to explain. First, in terms of the timeframes you're hearing in the bill, the people say, well, this typically it's 30 or 60 days. That's in deregulated states. The 2007 Act was going from a period where for 8 years Virginia looked at deregulation back into re-regulation. And in that regard, we're fairly unusual to have competitive shopping at all in a fully regulated state. And when we're talking about deregulation, we're talking about the generation component of the bill. 100% of customers use our distribution or at least transmission facilities. Some very large industrial customers don't have distribution per se. They connect at transmission voltage. So references to states that allow 30 to 60 days, those are competitive shopping states where states have made the decision to deregulate. As you'll recall, Mr. Chairman, in 2007, we had just seen our neighbors to the north, Maryland, see a 72% price spike the day that capped rates came off and they went to fully deregulated. The General Assembly decided to re-regulate, left a narrow exemption for competitive shopping for the largest, most sophisticated customers. But the reason for the 5-year stay out is to allow us to plan the system and be ready to serve the customers that we have. Under this legislation, if you were to enact it, based on last year's sales, about 24.6% of our load would be able to competitively shop and be able to drop in and out of the system every 3 months. So as we're looking at the types of facilities that we need, particularly but not exclusively on the generation side. It is very hard to do that plus or minus 25% of your load every 3 months. That is a provision much more characteristic of a state like Connecticut or states in the Northeast where you do have competitive shopping. I will say that in terms of our rates, this was briefly mentioned today, but I'll reemphasize it. Dominion has extremely competitive rates, both in terms of residential rates and in terms of industrial rates, and that's over a long period of time. What would be very hard for us to run the system is to have fixed costs, because if people are dropping back in every 3 months, we've got to build to accommodate people coming back in, and 75% of our customer base is then needing to support the infrastructure that we need to support 100% of our load if people are able to drop in and out every 3 months. And for those reasons, we would respectfully oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Ron Jefferson with Appalachian Power. I wanted to point out a couple others. Of course, we associate ourselves with comments with Dominion, but also wanted to point out a couple other things in this bill. If you look over on the second page, the intent around lines 68 through 75, that's the section in the code that was the protections for the existing ratepayers. If they choose to shop, then there was a provision. There's something to be said about having to stay out for 5 years, where if you look in here, you'll see that they do have the opportunity to come back in before the 5 years. But the key component of that is that the commission gets to determine at what rate or at what cost to other customers that customer coming back to the regulated company would be. So those are belts and suspenders that's in the existing code today to protect other ratepayers if they choose to shop. Now, what this bill does is completely take that out. It completely takes it out, and what they have over on lines 45 and 46 is it just says that they want to be able to leave, come back in 45 days or 90 days, whichever the date is, or 3 months, and they want to be able to get the current rate as any other customer. You know, that is a pretty good deal to be able to go in and out and just keep getting the same rate. So, you know, we respectfully ask that you will, this is definitely not good for our regulated customers, and we ask that you oppose the bill.
And let me just make a comment. I'm sure that the businesses that showed up here could not stand 25% of their customers disappearing in 30 days or then perhaps coming right back in for 30 days. You can appreciate the stability, and also that you run the risk to allowing this in a regulated environment like we are, allow 30 days, 90 days, to allow customers to leave in 30 or 90 days. What that does is have the added effect of throwing those excess costs, if you will, onto the rest of the ratepayers, putting pressure on the rest of the electric bills for those that don't have that luxury of coming in and out of the system. And so Senator Sasslaw, did you have?
Yeah, Richard Holland and I, back in the late 90s, were the ones that put in the bills to deregulate the market here. And if memory serves me correct, after, I think that was 98, and 9 years later, no one had come in, whereas in New England, they had quite a few people when they deregulated because their rates were pretty high, but no one came in to compete. So that's what drove the re-regulation. I think it was in 2007. So, you know, I mean, we're not running a restaurant where you come and go as you please. I mean, it sounds good, you know, when you present it, but there's some other problems that are involved.
Senator Sasslaw, Senator Norman still has a committee that's a hangover, if you will, from the deregulation, deregulation environment, and it'd be my intent that we carry the bill over and re-refer this to Senator Norman's committee, have it take a look at it. There's some laudable points to it, but there's also some great, a lot of concerns expressed to us by the utilities and by myself, quite frankly. But the committee operates by motion, but we'd love to hear that.
Can I close real quick?
Certainly.
Just addressing some of those things.
Sure.
The bill, some of the things that were said by the two businesses that supply the energy, not all the businesses that buy it. The bill would have no impact on the utility recovery costs related to distribution or transmission because the shopping customers would still pay those costs. The impact on competitive sales on the incumbents is no different from the impact on self-generation, which is permitted, or by energy efficient improvements, which we incentivize. Also, addressing the specific mention about the cost of utilities, on line 51, you'll see a safeguard has been built in there that says the State Corporation Commission can impose additional costs to the returning customers if such costs are necessary to avoid adverse impacts to utilities on other customers. So my preference would be report, and if you can't report it, I think it'd just be great to have that vote rather than send it elsewhere.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support your motion, but I got to tell you, this whole 5-year thing drives me up the wall. I mean, that's a really long time. And, you know, for different companies having to look at a 5-year window, you know, hopefully, you know, Senator Norman's group can look at that and come to some type of consensus on vastly reducing that window. Thank you.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that the bill be carried over and referred to Senator Norman's committee. Substitute motion. It's been at a substitute motion to report the bill. Is there a second? Hearing none, we go back to the primary motion.
Thank you, Senator
Stanley. Primary motions is carry over to bill. Clerk, open the rolls. Okay. That bill's
12
been
ayes,
carried
2
over.
nays.
Thank you, Senator Sudeline. Senator Wexton, and then, okay, Senator Donovan. Okay. Okay.
Senator Donovan, you want to make a presentation?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, I would like to present Senate Bill 639. And this is a bill that would require health carriers to establish a service through which the purchasers of their health plan could go through a portal and look at different services that they had been recommended to have or ordered to have, and be able to look at the options for higher and lower cost services, and then be incentivized to choose the lower cost services. So if they did, they might get some of the shared savings that the health plan has, and that is essentially the bill. It's something that the health plans already actually do in most cases. They have portals where they show the patients what the cost of expenses are and look at those. So being able to transmit this into a shared savings would incentivize the individual to reduce the cost of health care. I think this is a really important part of the package that we're looking at for health care savings across the state.
Great. Senator Donovan, thank you. Guys, let me just tell you, if there's a motion to report this bill, which I hope there is, I think it needs to go to finance. There's a lot of fiscal impacts and otherwise, so that we'll do that. Could we have those that are in favor of the bill come up and speak? And we're going to put a 3-minute clock on that, and then those that are in opposition will have the same. But if it does pass, it does need to go up upstairs. Welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. My name is Josh Archival. I'm a senior fellow at the Foundation for Government Accountability. We're a think tank that specializes in healthcare. Just want to share what this actually looks like, a real case of this bill in practice. There's a woman named Jenny with Crohn's disease. She was receiving her medication $40,000 every 8 weeks. As a result of a very similar program to this, she was moved to a provider, she chose to move to a provider, that was 90% less, and she received a $500 shared savings for doing so. That's this bill in practice. Okay. If you're concerned about higher healthcare premiums for your constituents, which Virginia has had some horror stories in the news about, this is the kind of proposal that needs to get to lowering healthcare costs going forward. I hope you give this serious consideration moving forward.
Well, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate the information. Yes. Nicole.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Nicole Riley with NFIB, and we support the legislation. For many of our small business owners, health care costs are their number one problem, and it has been over the last couple decades. We believe this bill is another a tool, an option for them to be able to try to rein in rising costs and premiums. Thank you.
Nicole, thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Anyone else here to speak in favor of the bill? If not, are there those that have concerns about the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Doug Gray, Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. We're concerned that this bill needs more study. What this idea is taking a service that health plans offer in the large group market as a buy-in service. So a self-insured entity will buy the service in the hopes that it will generate savings for the self-insured entity. This bill takes something that's offered by health plans in the self-insured market and requires it to be offered in the fully insured market. It applies it to the individual and small group markets while exempting an association plan or an out-of-state plan. So it basically adds an administrative expense to a already struggling marketplace. We have clearly discussed with this committee, and everyone knows that the individual market is irreparably damaged by the ACA at this point. And so to add an additional administrative responsibility on top of that will go to the premium and doesn't really help the enrollee. I would suggest to you, if you look at the actual language of the substitute on lines 28 and 29, it's a very broad definition of health benefit plan. It includes short-term policies. Short-term policies are being looked at as a method to get out from under the individual health plan in the ACA market. Burdening them with this is not going to help make them more attractive as an alternative. It'll actually hurt their ability to be an alternative. Okay. It'll also hurt the existing individual market. There are good ideas involved in doing this. Health plans came up with the idea, but we didn't come here asking for it to be applied as a mandate to the entire marketplace. The one place where they have passed a bill to do this, it hasn't quite taken effect yet in Maine, and it applied to 4 items, only 4 items. And those items were imaging, physical therapy, lab services, and infusion therapy. And that's it. A much more limited approach would be the right idea. I would also remind you that in line 32 and 33, you've exempted the state health plan. The state health plan is doing this as a buy-in right now. What this is doing to the rest of the market is saying everyone has to do it. We respectfully suggest that we would love to work with the patron on this in the off session and try to get it to the right form so that we can come back here to work on it together. This is our idea. Where it's going is way too far, way too fast with unintended consequences, as I've described in the definition of health benefit plan. Thank you for the opportunity to share our concerns.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, I think this bill's a ways from soup, but I do think that it is a tool that Doug's correct, that we need to take a look at as we're looking at not only the assistance under the safety net, but also looking at what's available for us to keep the premiums down for others. Mr. Chairman, I would hope that this bill could go upstairs to finance and we could merge this with about 3 or 4 other bills that are up there so that we can take a look at it. And I think Mr. Gray answers or asks a number of pretty good questions, but I think the vehicle upstairs would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator.
We have been listening to the concerns of the health plans, and there are definitely some changes that we can make to this bill to make it better. We're moving on a fast schedule, so we haven't had a chance to do that. If it gets another breath up in finance, we're happy to look at that. I want to congratulate and thank Mr. Gray for such a great idea, because we appreciate the health plans coming up with it. But it is something that really could help us as we try and process all the variables that contribute to the cost of health care. So I hope this committee, with the intent of the patron to really change this and make it work, will send it on to finance.
Absolutely. Okay. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be reported and re-referred to finance.
Been moved and seconded. Senate Bill 639 be reported and referred to Committee on Finance. Clerk, open the rolls. Okay. Okay, that bill's reported. Is that
Thank you,
completed?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
Committee.
Wexton, you've been waiting so patiently.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was distracted by the fact that Senator Sturtevant appears to be in Senator Suderline's seat in the front corner. So, Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 711, which is a community solar bill. Under this bill, the SCC would be directed to start establishing rules for community renewable projects throughout the Commonwealth. Those projects are for projects that use as their sole energy source solar or wind power that would not exceed 20 megawatts of generated capacity and are located entirely within the service territory of a single retail utility. Those those plans would be open to no fewer than 5 subscribers, and no one subscriber would own the right to more than 40% of the electricity generated. They would purchase a subscription for a proportional interest in the renewable electric generation or the wind or solar generation of at least 200 watts, and it would cover at least no more than 125% of their average annual consumption of electricity. This is truly a way to move towards the 21st century model, where consumers are able to make the decision about whether they want to invest in renewables. One of the things that this committee has been looking at is facing problems from the State Corporation Commission about their determination about whether or not renewables are necessarily in the public interest. Well, this allows consumers to make those decisions for themselves, and if necessary, pay a premium. So I hope it is the will of the committee to report the bill.
Senator Wexton, Senator Edwards had two bills, quite frankly, that were very, very similar to this. Do you know if this bill's been looked at by what's called the Rubin Group, or are you aware of the Rubin Group?
Mr. Chairman, I am aware of the Rubin Group. I don't think it has been looked at them yet, because this was last year when this was introduced. It was actually just rolled into the bill that Chairman's bill that had come through.
You may well have the chance to participate in the Rubin Group, Senator Wexton. This is very similar to that, and Chair would entertain a motion to carry this bill over and include that in my letter to the Rubin Group.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 711 be carried over to the next session of the General Assembly, and I add this to the letter. And Senator Wexton, I would encourage you to participate in that group. They meet often. So, okay, clerk, open the rolls. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
12
you.
ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstention.
All right, I'm going to take up my bill and turn the committee over here to Senator Newman.
All right, Senator Wagner.
Yes, Senator Newman, thank you. This is really, quite frankly, is a very, very easy bill, Senate Bill 989. And what it does is there's a certain, if you look at the bill, you'll see that there's 4 exemptions to the state's antitrust law. One of those being that the activities of any nonprofit hospital or any officer, director, or employee thereof, and directed reduction of nonprofit hospitals provides an exemption from Virginia's antitrust law. What Senate Bill 989, Mr. Chairman, does is remove that exemption. So it actually would allow the Attorney General to look at the antitrust actions of not-for-profit hospitals. And Mr. Chairman, I do have Mr. Troy with us right here. We've dredged him up, and Mr. Troy was the original author of the language in 1973. 1974. He was 12 years old at the time when he introduced that legislation.
So, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, we're going to hear from the expert witness, and before we get to the part where we're going to take pro and con, we're not going to put the clock on this portion.
Yeah, not on this portion, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and Senator Wagner, thank you for dredging me up. It's been a while since I've appeared. He is correct. In 1974, the General Assembly in those days had something called the Virginia Advisory Legislative Council. That was a group of senators and delegates, but what they would do is pick certain lay people, experts, et cetera, to study issues and make reports. Delegate Russ Carneal was chairman of the antitrust study. I was privileged to serve as vice chair, and we came up with a report in 1974. I have a copy I did dredge it up if members are interested. And you will see on page 3 of our report, the recommendation was for certain exemptions to exist to the antitrust laws. They were 3 exemptions only. The 4th exemption, which is the subject of Senator Wagner's bill, was not part of the recommendations made by this study committee. and it was not, at that time, an element of normal antitrust practice. So I went back and I looked, and the fourth exemption came into being in a 1979 act. It was introduced in 1978 by then Delegate Warren Stambaugh. It was studied, carried over, and then enacted in 1979. In 1978, there was also enacted by acts of assembly, an entity called the Virginia Health Services Cost Review Commission. And that commission existed until 1996. And that commission had the responsibility and the ability to gather facts, require people to, hospitals, et cetera, to come up with cost savings, cost benefits, as well as their actual embedded costs. And they could, in that time, share. One hospital could say, I'll take heart, the other would concentrate in cancer, the other perhaps in heart. And so those types of shared activities probably violated the antitrust laws. And consequently, the fourth exemption came into being. But since that Cost Review Commission has been abolished since 1996, I saw no need when we first wrote the act in 1974. I see no need for that exemption today. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Are there questions from the committee to Mr. Troy?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Sproul.
What was written at that time, so I'm trying to figure out what made the difference that you see no need for it now?
Well, the only need, well, first of all, going back, normally antitrust laws do not exempt nonprofit activities. Okay. The only need that came into being in the eyes of this assembly in '79 was because of the agreements that the Cost Review Commission would be able to get among hospitals. Since that Cost Review Commission no longer exists, it was abolished, then you should, in my mind, revert back to normal antitrust law, and there's no need for this exemption.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Senator Wagner, do you have those that are here to speak in favor of your legislation?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll just put a 5-minute clock on those
5-minute
individuals.
clock and they come on.
We'll hear from those that are in favor and then 5 minutes for those that are in opposition. Hello, welcome.
Hi. I'm retired Navy Captain Jim Sherlock. I'm retired. I don't work for anybody other than my retirement checks. And but for 10 years after I retired from the Navy, I was in systems engineering practice, an interesting part of which was reviewing hospitals for systematic efficiencies. I did a little bit of the work for the Academy of Medicine that did the study that resulted in the report to Error is Human, which looked at human and systematic errors in hospitals. Since I've retired and live in Virginia Beach, I've done a lot of work with that. I've done a lot of research on Virginia's healthcare laws. I provided you a piece of paper here that resulted from a study I did using both the Virginia Department of Health's own records and Centara's Form 990s, which are their reports to the IRS, that to get this data. With all of that, the business of healthcare delivery has, unfortunately, in my assessment, been corrupted in Virginia, not despite our laws, but because of them. We've sown. We have aggressive CEOs running large, expansive, and highly profitable 501c3 health corporations that the state protects from competition with the Certificate of Public Need law, protects from antitrust actions with the exception in the Virginia Antitrust Act, and from whom the federal, state, and local governments collect no taxes. They're granted tax exemptions if you look at their Form 990s as public charities, which is how they present themselves to the IRS in the state of Virginia.
I cut you off so others can speak. Oh, thanks. The rest of it's in the form.
Yeah, the rest of it is in here, but it'll show you what happens because of those laws, what happens in Hampton Roads, I really recommend you take a look at it, but thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. I've read over your report, and there's a lot of information here. Thank you for coming. Others that are here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 989, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to make comment. I'm the CEO of Chesapeake Regional Healthcare and here to support Senate Bill 989. An act of the General Assembly gave rise to my organization 52 years ago. We are a standalone public health care provider offering services to residents in the south side of Hampton Roads. We compete in an area of the Commonwealth that is dominated by Sentara. As depicted in the support information, which you should have, that was created from publicly available data reported by hospitals to the Virginia Health Information, 72% of area inpatient admissions are attributable to Sentara, and Sentara enjoys practically 100% of net operating income within the marketplace. This strongly suggests that Sentara is using its market power contrary to the public interest. My public hospital, including its ambulatory sites, provide patients with another choice of provider. We are concerned that a growing monopoly in our area seriously threatens our viability and ability to offer meaningful competition, patient choice. Additionally, Sentara has its own health plan, giving it access to Chesapeake Regional's lower rates and ability to pick and choose new sites and services offered by Chesapeake now or in the future. All of this presents a very interesting paradox. Because of Sentara's market power, which is staggering, from an antitrust perspective, Sentara cannot own nor can it manage my organization. Yet antitrust laws typically do not apply to new construction projects, giving Sentara the opportunity to use its market power to exploit COPN loopholes like the ones that exist for freestanding emergency departments. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Anyone else here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 989?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Doug Gray, Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. We are very concerned about certificate of need and consolidation in the marketplace. We have very few choices in hospital systems in some parts of the regions, our big regions of the state, and it makes it very hard for us to use leverage to try to get a discount for you in your premium.
Great. Thank you, Doug. Thanks for coming today. Thank you for that presentation, Senator Wagner. Are there those that have some concerns about Senate Bill 989? If it's okay with you, we'll put the same restriction of time. Any concerns? Yes, welcome.
Good evening, Brent Rawlings with Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association. We've heard a lot of information here today about this bill. There are a lot of issues that have been packed into a few lines in the State Antitrust Act that we're attempting to solve with some changes here. The historical perspective is very interesting and is worth thinking through about our state antitrust laws and how they work in the state. We're not here to advocate for anti-competitive conduct. We are here to advocate for cost savings initiatives. We are here to advocate for quality improvement initiatives, and to the extent that these changes to the antitrust law would interfere with that, we'd be concerned. But otherwise, we would just ask you to carefully consider the changes that are being made to law in the larger context of everything that's going on in healthcare today. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. Anyone here to also speak in opposition? Hearing none. Senator Wagner, why don't you wrap up and we'll
I'll wrap up, Mr. Chairman, very briefly. I mean, 120 years ago, the federal government passed antitrust laws for one reason. Monopolies were taking over. They would bury other competition and then raise prices up accordingly. I'm not suggesting that the hospitals are doing that today. I'm not saying they're not doing that today, the not-for-profit hospitals. What I am saying is that we need to be doing everything we can to hold down prices of health care. For the same reason that the federal government thought that antitrust was a good business and that competition helped, they passed those laws. We passed similar laws here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but we also, at the process, as Mr. Troy has told us, later on subsequently added not-for-profit hospitals under antitrust. But I can see no reason why they're not. our not-for-profit or our for-profit hospitals. Neither one should be operating as a monopoly, and we should be all about encouraging competition within the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I hope we'd support the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you very much. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that I've had several people in my office talking to me about this, and some would say that basically the nonprofits are covered by federal antitrust. However, I couldn't find an instance wherever they had actually been brought forward on that. I've also been told that basically as long as there's a conflicting state law, that the feds are just going to kind of back off. Is that
And
accurate?
that's true, Senator Cosgrove. There was some previous court case, I believe, from 1943, that the court ruled that since the Sherman Antitrust Act was mute on state, that if the state passed a policy that the federal government was, that was not going to get involved, as the state had taken a different direction. And so this is an attempt to correct that and right that wrong.
Senator
So,
Cosgrove.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, with that being said, I'd move to report the bill.
All right, it's a motion, second bill to be reported. Senator Sproul, you have a question before we vote, sir?
Yeah, I just want to thank Senator Wagner for this bill because Chesapeake, we like to call ourselves a standalone hospital, that we operate by ourselves, and we do not want to be eaten alive with the big giant. So I want to thank you so much for this bill.
thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second that the bill be reported. All those in favor will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. The clerk will close the roll.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. The bill passes.
Okay, I think we have one more bill to take up today. Senator McDougal, would you like to wrap up this little quick, non-controversial bill? Two. Oh, good. Wonderful. Oh, gosh. Oh, we got lots of,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah, it's carried up.
Senate Bill 405, and I waited with such anticipation, I didn't know if you were going to actually get to me.
Well, you're here.
I am here, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there's a substitute that Mr. Munyon has, and I move that we adopt the committee
Been moved and seconded that the substitute to Senate Bill 405 be adopted. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the bill's before us. Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, this is not a new topic to this committee. The committee remembers last year, it's legislation that came before this committee, and it really had to deal with two separate items. The first was new infrastructure being built by wireless communication providers, and then the second was small cell infrastructure, which was in essence put on existing infrastructure. We went through the conversation last year. We actually passed out the bill that dealt with small cell infrastructure, and that is current law. So, Mr. Chairman, what we did in the off season was had been a working group that the Senate had not really participated in. The House had convened. We came together with the House and continued to try to work on the issues of the new infrastructure and location and right-of-ways to see if we could bring all the different individuals together to an agreement. And Mr. Chairman, through multiple meetings through the summer, a lot of time and energy spent. Mr. Munyon and his team were there through it all. We were not able to come up with any movement, Mr. Chairman. So here's where we are today. General Assembly, and if it passes through us, ultimately the governor will have to make a decision about wireless infrastructure. I'll remind the committee where we are in Virginia is right now, wireless companies are building out in multiple states across the country. They're going to states where there is a certainty of a plan that they can build a system and have that system operate effectively. And Mr. Chairman, when I say certainty of plan, when they can go in and present and know what a time frame and schedule and fee structures are, whether they're approved or not based on the parameters, it's not the issue, but some certainty about structure. Right now, Mr. Chairman, in Virginia, we have a disjointed structure. Each of the 130-some different jurisdictions in the Commonwealth of Virginia make individual determinations. And when you're building an infrastructure system that crosses multiple jurisdictions, that system does not provide for that certainty. And thus, Mr. Chairman, the expenditures of those resources and build out. So I'll tell Mr. Chairman, I'll end with this, and certainly I know that there will be some people speak for and against. Right now, some parts of the Commonwealth of Virginia have the ability to operate on a 4G system. But Mr. Chairman, that system is taxed even today because of the increased data that's going through the pipeline of wireless infrastructure. If we don't do something substantive, the ability to get that type of 4G data being obtained is going to be greatly reduced as we go into the next coming years. And Mr. Chairman, the thing that I am particularly concerned about are my constituents in rural areas who don't have 4G right now. Sometimes it's difficult to get 3G where they are, and if we don't do something to build out these systems, they're going to continue to be left behind. And these are areas where you can't get fiber, you can't get hardwire because the population densities are not sufficient enough. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's enough of a soliloquy as we go into this, but I do think it's an important topic. It's one that's really going to change the direction of the Commonwealth of Virginia in regarding our constituents receiving information to what we all use the most, our phones and tablets. And this is going to be key to our business development as we continue to go forward.
Thank you, Senator McDougal. Senator Sasslaw.
Can local governments, because this is, I guess, maybe the crux of it, can they turn down a request for a tower, whatever, that they think is either improperly being located within a residential area or whatever? Or is this something that they simply got to approve if the property owner approves it?
Mr. Chairman, under the bill, I'm certainly today, local governments take a long time and don't approve them. But under the bill that's before you in the substitute, yes, they can still disapprove projects. So this doesn't eliminate the disapproval of projects. It does limit the timeframes when those projects have to be approved. And Mr. Chairman, it does limit the gamesmanships because the local government cannot say the application is not complete or these are the deficiencies in the application that we're rejecting it for, and then turn around immediately after that and then say, whoops, we were just kidding. Those weren't really the issues that we were rejecting it for and require new issues.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
I really have a question. I want to talk, I'd like to speak to the bill. Senator McDougal is absolutely right. And where I live is a fairly suburban area, but less than 1.5 miles from my house, there is no internet availability besides HughesNet. And it's extremely expensive. Yet we're trying in our high schools to get kids online, to use notebooks and iPads or whatever, but they don't have access to high-speed internet. Now, the localities have franchisees, that provide internet via cable or fiber, but they only go to certain areas. And if in our area, in Chesapeake, it's not provided to areas that have less than 25 homes per square mile. And so we have a lot of folks in my area, including my sections of Virginia Beach, Mr. Chairman, that don't have the ability to have this Wi-Fi. And Senator McDougal's bill, I think, is a critical part in bringing that Wi-Fi to these folks. And anymore, we really need to consider Wi-Fi as a necessary utility. It's the way business is done, it's the way education is done, and I hope we'll support this bill.
Okay. All righty, I'm going to give each side just 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Question.
Senator Sproul.
So this is not, this bill you proposed is not from the phone company themselves, it's from the localities who would love to see this type of Wi-Fi out in their area.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Sproul, you would think that the localities that their constituents are clamoring, begging and pleading for technology, being able to receive that wireless infrastructure would be supporting this, but you'd be wrong.
Okay. Those in favor of the bill? 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Rick Cornwell with Verizon. I was the chairman of the negotiating team for the industry over the last 2 years. I think Senator McDougal did a very good job at positioning this bill before you. But I'm going to try to summarize a couple of things and I'm going to repeat something that Senator Sasslaw asked. I want to make it very clear to everybody on the committee A locality will retain the ability to reject any application. The only thing we ask is that they give us a reason for why they rejected it, and if there's a remedy, let us know what that remedy is. Senator Spruill asked the question. You would think localities would like this. Localities do want it. They want the service, but they want it under their terms. It is difficult these days with the number of small cells we're going to need for 5G, and we're talking about 5G now, to pay the prices and go through the regiment that we have gone through in the past to get a tower built. There will still be a need for towers in rural areas because that's the best way to provide service. But in a more urban area or anywhere where the population is greater, we're going to small cell mounts on an existing structure, be it a utility pole, which is most common, or a light pole. It could be on the back of a sign. It could be on top of a building. And it looks very much like a car antenna. And if there's an aide around here who would like to pass these out, I'll give you an idea of what one of those structures look like. You can see this. But in respect of Chairman Wagner's request for 3 minutes, I'd like to spend my time telling you what this bill doesn't do. This bill does not, I want to emphasize again, does not prohibit a local government to perform land management. They can still reject any application. 2, the bill does not minimize a local government's ability to minimize visual impact problems. 3, it doesn't prevent a locality from restricting wireless service or wireless structures in historic sites. It protects areas that are underground, where they've been underground. So this bill attempts to bring us in line with what other states are doing and make us more competitive and attract the capital to Virginia that is being allocated by my company and others to expanding wireless service. And the future of wireless will be wireless broadband. The future of broadband will be wireless broadband. Number of people here waiting here for you.
I'm going to add 2 more minutes just because of the gravity of the topic, and I know the
Yes, sir.
opposition's there. So, okay, you got 2 more minutes.
Okay. Now, I'm ready for others. I'm ready for others to comment.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Kyle. I'm Vice President of Regulatory at Chantel. We service almost exclusively rural markets in Virginia. We were involved in this working committee because it will help us provide better service to these communities. In a word, it's capital efficiency. We will be able to redeploy our capital, and more of our capital will get out to providing better service to these communities with Senator McDougall's comments about 4G service. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Vince Apperzes with AT&T. We support this bill and make it easier for us to invest in Virginia.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Chris White, Vector Corporation, here on behalf of T-Mobile. We support the bill.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Troy Murphy on behalf of the Northern Virginia Technology Council. We support the legislation as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee, Durant Walton with Virginia Telecom Industry Association. My rural wireline companies support this legislation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ryan Dunn at the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We also support the bill.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Beth Cooley, I'm with CTIA. We are the trade association for the wireless communications industry. We support this legislation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Brian Hedlund. I'm the president for Sprint for Delaware, D.C., Maryland, and most importantly, the Commonwealth of Virginia. On behalf of the 100 associates in Virginia that work for Sprint, we support this bill. Mr. Chairman, you eloquently said earlier today that change is coming. Technology is emerging faster than we all realize. The investment dollars associated with what this bill will bring are a great opportunity for Virginia to continue to lead the way in technology.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Forehand with the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We also support the bill. Thank you.
Okay, let's hear from the opposition. I'm going to give you 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Michelle Gowdy with the Virginia Municipal League. If I can, I'd like to answer Senator Saslaw's question first. With regard to our localities, this bill has, and unfortunately the substitute doesn't have the even numbered pages, so we don't have the line numbers from the substitute. But in the original bill, if you go to line 143, it starts from there and it goes to line 181 and talks about the 11 things that localities cannot consider when disapproving one of these applications. Those 11 things have the effect of making us have to approve these applications. And it's totally contrary to any other zoning review that we conduct currently. In addition to that, it then requires that we have to provide them with how they could remedy the application so that we don't disapprove it. Again, not something that we normally do in our normal zoning.
Yeah. Senator
Do you
Satchel.
have any of the reasons that you can't use?
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Sazla, it says here that we can't ask them about the specific need for the location. We can't ask them if there's a different type of technology or if they could move the tower to somewhere else. And so it prohibits us from having those conversations about reasonable things. It also prohibits us from certain types of aesthetics and things like that. So it really does prohibit the way that we can have a conversation about where these towers would be appropriate.
Senator Satchel.
All right, so what you're telling me is that if they wanted to come in a residential neighborhood and put up a tower, you can't reject it because it's not aesthetically or it's not in conformity with the way the neighborhood is fashioned. You can't do that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Sazla, I would submit under this bill, it's extremely difficult to do that because even if we say, I would argue you really can't under the criteria in the bill.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I can answer Senator Cosgrove's question, I think that localities agree with you. This ought to be a utility, and it ought to be required for service the last mile everywhere. However, right now, they're not a utility. And the problem that we have is they don't want to use their business model and come to that last mile where our citizens generally need it. And one of the things that we did, VML and VECA both at the beginning of the summer, we wrote the chairmen from last year of Commerce and Labor and offered to work on rural and underserved areas because that's where we think we have the biggest need. But when you have a business that's not like a utility and not under those constraints, it's awfully difficult to force them to do such and provide the service. So while our localities want service, we feel strongly that the importance is that our localities have the ability to have input from their local elected officials and from the citizens. And two of the things that this bill does is it has some language in it on line 115 that talks about the words deemed approved. Well, that takes the ability of the local elected official to do such, and I'll let the others speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Dean Lynch with the Virginia Association of Counties. All I can do is just echo the comments of Michelle from VML. We oppose the bill also.
Well, thank you.
Dean, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I mean, is that all counties?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Okay.
It's
Rural
it's
counties oppose it as
yes,
well?
Yes, sir.
rural
All 94
county
of 95
government.
counties that are members of VACO.
I'm sorry?
All 94 of 95 counties that are part of VACO.
All 94?
It was a legislative recommendation,
Okay.
yes.
Just checking, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Chris Costa. I'm an Assistant County Attorney for Fairfax County. The Board of Supervisors opposes the bill. Appreciate the work group that happened over the summer and over the year. I wasn't a participant, our county, we weren't a direct participant in the work group itself, so weren't able to really speak to the bill until it came into session. I've tried to open up some lines of communication with the proponents of the bill to see if we can come together to work something out, but I don't know that I've gotten any traction on that. The main objection I would quickly just mention, and then quickly leave, would be the bill makes turns what is now a legislative process into an administrative process. And in kind of plain English, that means instead of doing what this legislature does, we'd be doing what the governors do. We'd have to set certain criteria that if they meet those objective criteria, then you have to approve that particular application, whatever it might be. Right now, we don't have a problem with these kinds of applications. We get to yes. We seem to work well in our own county. This will just deal with, I don't think this bill, we are not one of the underserved kind of areas, so to speak, that I think would be the target of the bill. And so unless there are any questions, I'm going to, that's all I have to say.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Senator Black.
Do you see the sort of the struggle that we're having, because we are constantly being bombarded by people saying we don't have the service that we need, get it into the outlying areas and so forth, and then we go to work and we do everything that we can humanly do, and then we're told, well, you know, we don't have enough regulations and enough controls to allow the localities to stop this service from moving out there. I mean, it just seems like sort of a conflict that you put us in by saying, you know, get it out there, get the service, but then at the same time, we got to closely regulate it and slow it down and control it. So that's the problem we're having.
If I could just briefly, Mr. Chairman. Sure. So as localities, we often mediate between the community and its desire to have a community that still maintains a high quality of life. That is part of our economic development program in Fairfax County. We want places where businesses will thrive, but we're also where the people who work in those businesses, and we have some pretty particular ones, that we want to make sure that we have a high quality of life, high school quality of schools, et cetera. And that all feeds into local land use. Land use is traditionally a core function of local government, that not so much state, not so much federal, because in each of our communities, we want to be able to say what that community will look like. And so in our county, what we've been able to do is to strike that balance. Again, we have found a way to approve the vast majority of applications in our county. And every now and then, it's with the legislative, with the regular zoning process we have now, we have the ability to open up those conversations and find solutions that work for both sides. For these towers that are 50 feet or under, I don't see how we would have that ability to enter into that conversation and mediate between the community and industry. If they meet if they check all the boxes, then you approve that application. I hope that answers the question, Mr. Chairman, Senator Black. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Morgan Whalen, City of Norfolk. We're also in opposition to the bill. Our council unanimously passed an ordinance against this. And also that same night, we are for wireless for our residents. That same night, we also passed an ordinance for another franchise agreement. So we have passed these routinely. They're constantly on our council docket. We are against the change in the process. We want to continue to have opportunity for our citizens to have input and to continue to have our public hearing process. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Raybold, and I work with Cityscape Consultants, and we can consult to local government across your state. We're in opposition to this legislation because in 2016, the federal government issued a report called the Report and Order, and it provides very good outline and a baseline for the industry to deploy. And if this document were consistent with those regulations, we would support it. But right now, the definitions are inconsistent. Your definitions of base station and co-location are in direct conflict with the FCC's definition. This legislation does not include eligible facility requests, eligible support structures, substantial change, and all of these are guidelines that the FCC has recently put in place that if they were used by the industry and local government would help facilitate the deployment of small cells and co-locations. Additionally, as mentioned previously, the antenna is about the size of a car antenna, but your definition for small cell is 28 cubic feet. That's considerably larger than a car antenna. We also oppose the way that it is provided in here that substantial record be encouraged. However, you cannot submit propagation mapping, and propagation mapping is what helps determine whether a site is needed. So the question about would you have to approve this in a residential area? The problem is there's no substantial evidence left.
Okay, ma'am,
that the
your time is
industry can
up,
present.
and now
Okay.
just tell me who you are, and obviously you oppose the bill, you wouldn't be here.
Mr. Chairman, Ron Jordan, representing Prince William County, the city of Richmond, and the city of Chesapeake. All three city governments have formally taken positions in opposition to the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Leighton Powell with Scenic Virginia, and we also oppose the legislation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Mathias, City of Virginia Beach. Council took an official position opposing this. Hope you'll keep that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, my name is Pat Keller, Virginia Conservation Network. We also oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mary Ann Curtin with Chesterfield County. We also oppose the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Jerry Wilson, City of Newport News, also opposed.
Okay, thank you. Senator Sproul, did you have something?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman and members, I'm curious of those who came in opposition of the bill, and they're so concerned about the localities having service. Seeing some from Chesapeake, some Chicago who live out in the rural area, they do not have it out there. And then the gentleman said that the city of Chesapeake would oppose it. Now, I'm having a problem with that. I can't believe that Chesapeake City Council would have opposed it unless they told John, didn't tell me. So I can't believe that, number one. But number two, my concern is what they are doing for the citizens. I live in the Georgetown section. We had another provider. And when it happened, when fires came through, and that thing went through, man, the people to jump on that thing, and it improved the service of the communities as well. You had in the River High School, Oxford Smith School, and all around the areas, they loved it. And I was saying, hey, and they say, we haven't been now, this people that hopping on me say, hey, you used to work for Verizon, how come we can't get it out in our area? And so to me, I'm hoping that you support this bill. I wish I could vote for it, but Verizon the best company in the world. But I can't vote for it, but I wish I could. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman. All right. Senator McDougal, wrap up. We got a bunch of bills. Sir, I'm sorry. The committee's ready to move.
Mr. Chairman, just two things. One, just somebody mentioned the deemed appropriate language. A complete application for a project is deemed appropriate if the locality fails to approve or fails to disapprove the application. It's not just willy-nilly or at some random point in time. They're very specific things. And Mr. Chairman, I would also draw the committee's attention to one of those 11 conditions is that the locality cannot deny an application because the locality doesn't have the ability, the locality is not able to be co-located at the applicant's location. So those are the types of items that the localities are unhappy about not being able to get it in. Mr. Chairman.
Is that a motion?
To report.
Okay.
The substitute.
It's been moved and seconded. Senate Bill 405 be reported. Clerk, open the rolls.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 abstentions.
Okay, thank you. That bill's reported.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that the other one, Senate Bill 823, is any less controversial, but it is more limited.
Wait a minute, I made a mistake on that one. Was that?
Oh,
that had to go to finance, I believe.
Report and re-refer to finance.
Okay.
No, well, I think, Mr. Chairman, I think that that's 823. I don't think that that's 405 because 405 has no fiscal impact.
You're right. Okay.
823 is the one that does have fiscal impact.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, 823, as we went through this process, I think maybe last year we had included this language in the original, or conceptually some of these things in the original bill. As we went through it, Mr. Munyon correctly pointed out that it is a different code section because it deals with right-of-ways, so we have it in a separate bill. This now, Mr. Chairman, this is in reference to right-of-ways, establishes specific fees for right-of-way access to these types of facilities that we were just talking about, the support structures. And it lays out what those specific fees are for the height of the towers and their yearly fees. So $1,000 a year for structure below 50 feet, $3,000 for structure 50 feet to 120, $5,000 for structure 120 feet or greater, and then $1 per square foot for any other equipment that's placed on the ground. And Mr. Chairman, that increases every 5 years. It's readjusted based on the consumer price index so that future individuals that are older than Senator Saslaw, when they're here and have to hear these bills, they won't have to hear about the fees.
Okay. All right. All right. Does anyone oppose this legislation? The proper motions report and re-refer to finance. Been moved and seconded that the bill be reported and re-referred to finance. Clerk, open the rolls. Does that complete what you have, Senator McDougal?
That does, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Sturdivant, you're up. And then Senator Lucas. And then Senator Chafin.
Mr. Chairman, I have one bill. It is Senate Bill 964. It is a bill dealing with catastrophic health plans that is something I've been working on with Senator Stewart since before session, and something I'm working on with Senator Newman and Senator Reeves now. And the idea is this: we all hear from our constituents.
Let's hold it down, please.
We all hear from our constituents repeatedly how high their monthly premiums are for their health insurance, and they continue to go up by double-digit percentage points every year. What this bill seeks to do is, presently under the ACA, a catastrophic health insurance plan is available, but in order to qualify to be able to purchase that catastrophic health insurance plan, which has a relatively high deductible but a relatively low monthly premium, you have to be either under the age of 30 or you have to qualify for a hardship waiver, which is usually economic based. What the federal government is now moving more towards is to allow for state innovation waivers under Section 1332 of the ACA. And so what this bill would seek to do is to request a state innovation waiver from the federal government to allow Virginia to offer catastrophic health care plans in the Virginia market to anyone, not just those who are under the age of 30 and not just those who are subject to a hardship. I think it's important to note that I've been in discussions with the health plan folks trying to work on some language that they can live with or at least not oppose. And I understand that this bill needs to go to finance, and I think that would be a helpful place for some additional substantive work to be done on it.
Okay, all right. We understand. Continue to massage the bill. Is there a motion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I move to report the bill and re-refer to finance.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 964 be reported and re-referred to Committee on Finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Senator Lucas, you have a bill? You're up. Oh, sorry. Put it on the board. No, you're up.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
Senate Bill 860.
Yep.
You have a substitute?
Okay, there's a motion on a substitute. It's been moved and seconded that the substitute Senate Bill 860 be adopted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the substitute's before us.
Yes, sir.
Lucas.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the substitute removes the language regarding fair and non-discriminatory rates. Today, I'm presenting Senate Bill 860. This is a bill about access to health care, about making sure that the investment the General Assembly has made in our public hospitals are not being unfairly undermined. First, I want to tell you about a public hospital in one of my communities, Chesapeake Regional Medical Center, exists today because at a time when no other hospital system would locate in the southern part of Chesapeake to serve the citizen, the General Assembly stepped in and granted them the ability to find a way. The General Assembly deemed Chesapeake Hospital Authority to be a public instrumentality and provided as it's changed the requirements to exercise public and essential governmental functions to provide for the public health, welfare, convenience, and prosperity of the residents of the city of Chesapeake and other persons served by the authority in its service area, as well as to provide improved medical care and related services to them. In the years since the General Assembly granted this authority and prescribed their directive, Chesapeake Regional Medical Center has done what no other hospital would do. It has served its community. It has grown with its community. As required by the General Assembly, the public hospital supports its community in so many ways. The Commonwealth has rules for companies that do business with the government here in Virginia. There are requirements for a percentage of contracts to include DBEs, requirements to have DUNS numbers, DUNS numbers, certain certifications, and so on. I believe that by passing this bill, we will guarantee the Virginia Assembly's investment, the taxpayers' investments in the public hospital known as Chesapeake Regional Medical Center, and that it will be secure. Mr. President, the CEO of Chesapeake Regional, Reese Jackson, is here to speak to you about more important matters involving the hospital.
Thank you, Senator Lucas. Okay.
Reese? Oh, here he is.
I'm going to limit it to 2 minutes, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to explain the rationale for Senate Bill 860. Senate Bill 860 applies only to provider-owned health plans. It's grounded in sound public policy because it protects the ability of healthcare providers to compete with one another on a level playing field. The City of Chesapeake is a growing community, and my organization serves Chesapeake residents in southeastern Virginia Beach and northeastern North Carolina. We operate only one hospital, whereas Centera operates several hospitals in our area. Because of Centera's vertical integration with Optima, its own health plan, Centera has remarkable power to direct patients and reimbursement to its own ambulatory care centers or hospitals. For example, we have a site in Chesapeake that's included in the Optima plan, but the one that's near Centera Hospital is not included. Centera also has plans to develop a freestanding ED that's nowhere remotely close to public transportation or would not serve any Medicaid members to any significance. So it's this inherent conflict of interest when insurance premium dollars are used to restrict access and curtail competition. When applied to a public hospital, these tactics are not justifiable. And this bill, if you approve it, would promote competition by ensuring that there's a level playing field. This bill does not impose any restrictions on a provider-payer health plans as Innova's partnership with Aetna, nor does it restrict an offering from a public agency medical center, such as VCU's Virginia Premier Health Plan. Finally, it would not cover Anthem or other traditional health plans. It only applies to provider-owned health plans because of the inherent conflict of interest that exists from its parent company. This conflict of interest is anti-competitive and should be tempered to preserve patient choice and competition. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, are there people who wish to speak against the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Paul Spidell with Centera Healthcare. Appreciate you having us here today. Centera is the fifth largest employer in the state with 28,000 employees. Part of that is a health plan, Optima Health. And we don't view it as a conflict of interest. We view the fact that we have a health plan as enabling us to provide better care for patients. I've spoken with you, Mr. Chairman, some of your colleagues. I know there are concerns about Centera's scope and concerns that we even own a health plan at all from some of you. I'd really like the opportunity to talk with you about those in more detail at some point, including that every time Centera expands, quality goes up in those areas, and including the fact that we have 8 of the top 20 hospitals in terms of charity care are Centera facilities. All that said, I don't think...
I'm sorry. Can I ask, do your premiums go up too?
Pardon me, sir?
Premiums go up too?
Every time, Mr. Chairman, are you asking, do the premiums go up every time we expand?
When you all expand into an area with both the Optima coverage and the Centera coverage, I mean, do the premiums go up?
I'd be happy to look into that for you, sir. I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, that's my concern is we're people, I mean, and, you know, I love the quality of care that Centera provides in our community, but we've got increasingly people who can't afford to buy the coverage. And it does appear to me to be a conflict of interest.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the perspective. As I said, I'd love to have a longer conversation. Let me say this. Regarding this bill, I don't know that it gets to addressing the concerns that you're concerned about there. And in a state where we care so deeply about our reputation as a good place to do business, a law that would say this organization must do business with that organization strikes me as going in the wrong direction. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kara Gunther with VCU Health System, speaking on behalf of our managed care plan, Virginia Premier. Given that this bill has been deemed the Public Hospital Inclusion Act, you may find it curious that I am here in opposition to this bill. Indeed, on the delivery side of our system, we could stand to benefit from some of the provisions of this bill. But in completing our evaluation of the proposed legislation, we determined that the deleterious impact to our health plan and really to the underpinnings of managed care in general would far outweigh any potential benefits to VCU Health System. In mandating that health system-owned health plans contract with public hospitals, and until just a few moments ago, by mandating that they do so at explicit rates, this bill would undermine the very underpinnings of managed care, a hallmark of which is private contract negotiations between payers and providers. The Commonwealth has made an effort to move in the direction of managed care, and we do feel that this would take us in an opposite direction. Therefore, we would respectfully ask that you oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, Senator Sproul.
today earlier, last week, I was hearing that there was a substitute, and I asked you this, was it today I asked you?
Yes,
Did you have
sir.
a copy did you have a copy, know anything about the substitute?
Yes, sir, and I just learned of the substitute when it was passed out here in committee.
And did you ask anyone from Chesapeake about if there was a substitute that you see it?
I asked them, but I don't believe that it was prepared until this evening, so
Thank you.
I just saw it a few moments ago.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. 11 seconds.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. Mr. Chairman, Sam Gersmeyer with Central Health and Piedmont Community Health Plan. Piedmont Community Health Plan is a small provider-owned plan in Central Virginia that Central Health took full ownership of in the late fall of 2014. We're opposed to the bill for two main reasons. Firstly, we do not believe that an isolated contract dispute in another region of the state where we do not sell any plans should necessitate a change in the way that Piedmont contracts in good faith with public institutions throughout the state. And to the best of my knowledge, these relationships have not resulted in any issues suggesting the need for this type of overreaching policy. So we believe it could have some negative impacts down the line, and similar to the statements that have been echoed previously. So we're opposed to the bill.
Thank you. All right, Senator Lucas. Oh, Senator Doug Gray.
Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Gray,
I'm back.
speak up.
Doug Gray,
2
Executive
seconds.
Director of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. We too are opposed to this legislation. Getting involved in matters of contract and mandating who you contract with is not something the Commonwealth has done thus far. If you go down this road, you will regret it, because the next group, the next group, the next group, the next group will want you to mess with the ability to contract. That's why matters of contract are between the parties. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and I just have to say, I hear you and I understand, but we got a real problem caused by this model that's been created. And I mean, you and I have talked about it. I think that this may not be the right fix, but this model's created a big problem, and one of the risks of big problems are fixes you don't like.
Okay. Committee operates by motion.
I move to report. Second.
Been moved and seconded that the bill be reported. Clerk, open the rolls.
Ten ayes, 3 nays.
Okay, the bill's reported.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Senator
sir.
Lucas. Thank you.
Thank you, committee.
Okay. No, Senator Chafin.
Senator Chafin, you've got some bills, 857. Right?
I do. I have 780 and 857. I'll
Take your pick.
I'll take 780 first. Take them in order. Senate Bill 780 is a bill that is it's a follow-up bill to my Senate Bill 1418 last year that passed and paved the way for the construction of one or more hydroelectric pump storage facilities in the Coalfield region. And so our vision all along with getting the hydroelectric, there's a substitute that needs to be passed out on this.
All right, Senator Cox Groves moves the substitutes, seconded by Senator Chafin. All in favor of adopting the substitute signify by saying aye. All opposed, substitutes before us.
So our vision all along, and by that I say the legislators there who supported these bills, was to have the concept of revenue sharing adopted by the 8 coalfield localities. They have all gone out and passed at our suggestion. They have had a work group meeting. They have agreed upon how to share the revenue, the host county.
Senator Chafin, you aware of any opposition to this bill?
I'm not aware of any.
Move to report.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this bill? Anybody opposed to it?
Move the report.
All your counties agree to it?
Everybody's.
All right. There's motion to report. This does not need to go to finance, is that right?
There is no fiscal impact.
I know, but there's no request for this to go to finance, is that correct? All right, it's been moved and seconded the bill be reported. Clerk will open the roll. All right, the bill's reported. Your next bill, Senator Chapin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate Bill 857.
My understanding is this bill, if reported, does need to go to the Committee on Finance. Go right ahead.
It would need to go to Finance. And so, we've heard a number of bills today and just dealt with, yes, there's substitute on this as well. Thank you. I move that substitute.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We adopt the substitute. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, substitutes before us.
Just as Senator McDougal was talking about the need for broadband out in the rural communities and how difficult it is to get that connectivity going, we came up with a thought about this money that flows into VDOT and it's user fees that VDOT charges for connections, for attachments that are on their easement on their right of way. So there's an amount of money there that's being created for this very type product that's out there.
Senator Chapin, is there similar uniform support for this, or are there opposing views?
I have not heard any opposing views.
All right. Anybody? I'm sorry, Senator Cosgrove.
Senator Chafin, is the money the VDOT gets from these pole attachments used for transportation now?
It is we could not actually, Legislative Services, we could not find where they were putting that money. Okay, we had a very hard time tracking that money down. But we did find how much it is, okay? And so this money, what we have proposed here is to have it out in the communities that represent at least 30% underserved, unserved with this broadband issue. And what it would do if we took half that money, it's going to be about $5 million. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to be passed out in these unserved communities. And we think that although it's not enough for a locality to build their own network.
Let's hear. Is there anybody here who's in opposition to this bill?
I move to report and refer to Senate Finance.
It's been moved and seconded. The bill be reported and re-referred to the Committee on Finance. Clerk will open the roll. Bill reports. Docket's clear.
Committee will rise.
I'm sorry. Is that it?
Oh, excuse me. Hang on a minute before you get up. Senator Sturdivant, what bill was that? 855. Senator Sturdivant. Didn't rise. We rose a little and we sat back down again. Yeah. It's kind of like Orville and Wilbur Wright. They almost got it, but this time that bill rolled into Senate Bill 966. Okay, is there a motion? Been moved and seconded that that bill be rolled into Senate Bill 966. Clerk, open the rolls. Okay.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstention.
Okay. That bill's been rolled in. Sasslaw is gone, so we'll carry it forward. Okay, we'll see you all Wednesday. Committee will rise. How many bills do we have? 20-some.